Hello, everyone. Welcome. It is Thursday night. It's time for Revolutionary Change. I'm Jen Perelman.
I am Peter Hager, and
I was like, am I down? Because sometimes I think it's because my volume is down.
You look like you've gotten some color, or is it that I'm just so damn white that I can't tell?
Well, it's both of those things are true. Both of those things are true. I've been outside. We're starting our garden situation, so we got all our garden beds set up today.
Very cool. Country living is doing you good.
It's so good. It's very, very pleasing. Yes.
Maybe I should get some sun for myself. Might do me.
Well, if you want to come push around a lawnmower or help, do some garden beds, you're welcome to it.
Are you going to have a composting station or anything like that?
We're going to have compost bins in our planters. So the compost is going to go directly into the planters, that we're not going to be collecting it.
Yippee. There's a lot of different places where we could start, but the thing that I think probably stands out the most right now, and as we continue to cover what we consider to be, I don't know, Jen, what stage in the collapse of Israel would you call this right now in terms of the direction they're heading in?
Well, when we talk about the collapse of empire and the 7 stages of collapse of empire, as I've said, we're somewhere between 5 and 6. Israel, they don't have the global currency, so they don't count as an empire in a way. So it's kind of hard to know. But I would say that militarily, socially, economically, geographically, and logistically, they're falling apart. I mean, they're not going to be there one way or another. I'm here for it. It couldn't happen fast enough.
There are many disturbing layers that we have covered over the course of the last 2.5 years regarding the state of Israel and what they have done in terms of perpetuating genocide. Now, the unfortunate truth about the culture and the society that we live in is that most people do not accept this at face value. They have to see it to believe it. They have to know that these things are going on. And as we have mentioned, the slaughtering of children, we have also mentioned the bombing of hospitals, aid workers. But perhaps the most unheralded part of all of this is the bombing and the execution of journalists, which has become far more common than one could possibly imagine. And journalists, I mean, throughout history, throughout any wars you could think of, conflicts, battles, and so forth, freedom of the press has always been considered untouchable. Like, somebody has to cover what's going on. People have the right to know what's going on. There were journalists in Vietnam. There were journalists in Nazi Germany. There were journalists in the Soviet Union. This is an accepted part of the discourse. But from Israel's perspective, there is no such thing as a free press. In fact, the press is the enemy. And by enemy, we mean we kill them on sight.
Well, they've killed more journalists since October 7, 23 than all of the modern wars combined have been killed. Journalists in war. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm going to stop myself here because this is a story that we're going to want to talk about with Craig Mokhiber. Is that how you say it?
Mokhiber, I believe.
Mokhiber.
I believe it's Mokhiber. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to check. I believe I've heard it both, but I believe it's Mokhiber.
But we are going to talk about that with Craig Mokhiber. UK journalist Steve Sweeney, who lived to tell his tale of an attempted assassination at a bridge in southern Lebanon earlier today. And we know for a fact they attempted to kill him because all of the Hasbara agents are out there saying, well, if we wanted to kill you, we would have. That's their response. That's their response. Trust us. You know what it's like? It's like when Debbie Wasserman Schultz said, if we wanted to rig the primary, believe me, we would have. No,
right.
Enough to make sure that you got the job done. They are always telling on themselves. Always. Always.
Yeah.
And so I want people to see just what we have to endure in South Florida. Now, this particular part of the district.
Well, we don't have to anymore because I live in North Georgia. So.
And I live in North Florida. Guys, smash
that.
Is
Peter choppy? Colin, is Peter choppy or am I just seeing him choppy? Can someone let me know if Peter's coming off kind of choppy?
He's clean on my end. I'll wait to see what chat says, though, too.
No, I don't know what it is. I look okay, but he looks like he's breaking up on my end, so I don't know.
Well, as long as the people are okay with where I'm at.
Okay, that's fine. No, but it's hard. It's just a little choppy for me.
So I want to take you guys, we want to take you guys on a little journey to Israel West or South or Little Israel US side.
Right. So, and keep in mind, this is one of the key reasons I'm not there.
Yes.
It's a lifetime of enduring that because I was born there. So just keep in mind, like, I've finally been able to escape it.
So if you guys remember, we've had Billy Corbin as a guest on our podcast before, and Billy has supported Jen's 2 congressional runs. He uses his platform in a way very much as Jen has. Billy is also Jewish and is extremely anti-Zionist. He is appalled at what this movement has become. And so he has made it his mission to basically expose the corruption of South Florida. And of course, so much of that corruption has to do with Little Israel. And one of those communities just happens to be Surfside, where, yes, the tragic tower collapse happened. But trust us when we tell you, there's always more to it than what you see. There is a reason why these things happen in real estate. Here's a prime example of what corrupted, elected, Israel-born officials do in South Florida.
Turn around, put your hands behind your back.
18-year-old Joshua Epstein cuffed on Friday in Surfside, accused of pushing the vice mayor, Jeff Rose, after a commission meeting.
He was charged with felony assault on an elected official. They arrested my son to teach him a lesson, to silence residents from speaking out. This is third world thuggery.
So that's Shlomo. I can't remember his last name.
He was the mayor, and then he wasn't, but now he is again. But he is also one of the key developers and is connected to, related to, and there's this whole group of developers that have essentially taken over the commission of Surfside. And so this guy as a sitting mayor, was dealing it sort of like Trump does. He was just sitting there and basically self-dealing in terms of development and changing zoning and whatever he needed to do. So now he's back.
Yes. And Elisa Salazar, who was the lady that was talking, she is a part of the community. She is Jewish. Pretty much everybody is in Surfside. But she's not part of that brigade. And as we've mentioned, there is a difference. There is a distinction with a difference when it comes to members of the Jewish community, despite what a lot of people out there would have you believe. On the one hand, you have well-intentioned people that are lifers. Salazar was not born there, but she has made her life there with her family for, I think, the better part of 20, 30 years. And she has seen the disintegration of the area as a result of all the Israelis that have moved into the area, led by this dickwad Shlomo. What a name.
And by the way, there's a gaggle of them, a herd. It's really quite large. It's really, they've taken over a lot of that portion of Miami Beach.
Okay, so now I'm being told that I'm choppy. Great.
I don't know. Maybe they just think the video is choppy. I don't know. You've been okay since the video started, but
all right. Well, we'll continue.
I'm not sure, but was this because that whole thing with her son happened a long time ago?
Well, this is an updated video that Billy posted the other day, so maybe this is recent.
Use the police force to silence a political opponent is something we see happen in Russia.
Mayor Surfside's an underhanded, slimy little schlub. That place is 8 blocks and somehow more corrupt than Havana. No shame or pride. I wanna be dictator with a man bun.
Don't ask me to get the police involved. Have a seat.
Thinks he's so smart. vodka, my sugar nut, Shlomo and Singer. Screw that guy, he's making secret trips with billionaires out in Dubai. Don't vote in Singer. In Surfside, psychotic racist putts, yeah, that's Dan Zinger. Wiener, bad guy.
So people asking, this is the mayor of Surfside in Florida. It is one of the cities. It is, like they said, it's a very small, I think how many blocks? It's like 8 blocks or however it is. It's a portion of Miami Beach. This guy is the mayor. He is a real estate developer. His family is all in real estate development, commercial real estate, and he is filthy. And this is the mayor of Surfside. And yes, Surfside is the town, by the way, where the Champlain Towers collapsed a few years ago. And by the way, this is the same commission when he was mayor the first time that decided to not have an investigation. So by the way, people, that building collapse never had an official investigation. The insurance company settled with residents, but there was no investigation. And Ileana, who's the mother of the kid that got arrested for free speech, she was one of the people and another person that were fighting to have an investigation, and he and his friends kept there. So there was never even an official investigation into the collapse of Champlain Towers, thanks to this guy.
He's the reason that they didn't investigate him?
No, it was that whole commission that he was the mayor at that time. But, you know, he was in charge of the commission that decided that they weren't going to have any further investigation because the insurance company settled and they didn't need to.
Makes you wonder what they might have been hiding.
Well, it does. And again, no, it wasn't all him, but he was the mayor of the city at that time.
Well, like you said, it's a cabal. We'll continue.
Yeah.
Does anybody know to speak Spanish to tell her there? Because I've said it like 4 times.
Vice Mayor Jeff Rose, a fake tough guy who likes to bully kids.
Keep pushing me. Back up. You already pushed me.
They're shameless assholes, moronic fascists jailing their critics. The chief of police has been accused of sexual harassment. Marciante, oh people please, we gotta vote him out on March 19th. Come on and sing, Shlomo and Singer. Screw that guy, a ringer for developers. There's dollar signs in his eyes. Fuck a little schmuck, yeah, that's Dan Singer. Wiener, ow.
I just want to let everybody know I have a few black friends.
You really said that? Oh my God.
Well, it was clearly taken out of context, but yes, it does sound like that was him. But so this is the kind of local governance. These are the kind of people that are in control of South Florida. Truthfully, Dade and Broward, same difference. Same difference. Same nonsense, same filth, same corruption.
Yeah, the Tri-County area especially. And Colin, if you could pull up the Broward story real quick, please.
No, he might have black friends, but his black friends don't have black friends. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So he might have some black friends, but they might not.
Well, maybe these are just people in politics whose wheels are greased and they say that they're friends, but in reality, it's all a means to an end.
Well, that might be.
Not like they would have any care or consideration to want to associate with them. There's that mini strip center that opened up across the street from the Hard Rock.
Yeah.
And there's like a hotel, like rooftop bar, I guess. I don't remember the name of it, but let's just say it's a hangout for those people. Like that's where they go. And it's very incestuous like that. The whole Zionist Israeli community is very incestuous. Like I stick out like a sore thumb if I'm even walking in their path because they know who's with them and who's not with them.
Oh yeah.
They are.
Oh yeah. Arguably are agreeable. I completely agree that Shlomo does not have black friends.
He doesn't have any
He's
friends.
a bigot because he's a bigot. And that's really what it comes down to. They're bigots.
So, Colin, if this is correct, I'm going to pull it up. So, if you thought that it was bad in Miami-Dade, it's just as bad in Broward County, where Jen and I used to live. For those who don't know who Sheriff Greg Toney is, trust me, there's some very interesting stories about that guy. Look into his background.
And he's Broward County Sheriff. And arguably in the last election where I voted, and I didn't vote for him, but he was the better of the two main options. Again, I didn't vote for either of them, but yeah, that's how.
You don't really have choices. You
Yeah,
have
there's
suck
choices.
and suck less, I guess is what you would say. But from Sheriff Greg Toney a couple of days ago, today, members of BSO's command staff and I joined Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz at the David Posnick JCC.
Okay,
Now,
that's where Reese went to pre-K. Like that's the JCC in Davie that we used to. Yeah, that's my.
Now,
old
would you
JCC.
call this particular JCC a Zionist haven? Is this a?
Well, it's interesting. I would say that of the Jewish people there, yes, it's a Zionist haven. But interestingly, and my friend Susie hangs out there quite a bit. And amongst like the senior people that hang out there, because they have a lot of senior programs, it's a lot of mixed people. There's Asian people, Black people, like it really is very diverse. So I will say that the center is financed by total Zios, but that there are regular people that use that center for various reasons. That's what I would say.
They had an important roundtable discussion focused on community safety. This is Broward County we're talking about.
And by the way, where Posnack JCC is in Davie, Florida. It is surrounded by, and I think you've got Cooper City. And yeah, I mean, this is one of the safest places where people go and raise their children.
Correct.
Like this is safe. It's one of the safest places you can be in South Florida and have a family. Okay. Like, so the fact that they're doing this here is absurd. There are definitely pockets of Broward County, not the affluent Jewish area, that might have some more safety considerations that would be more valid. This is ridiculous.
Well, this is also why we try to explain to people that when you want to understand politics and where elections truly matter, we've been telling you for the longest time that overwhelmingly congressional, like federal elections, they don't mean jack shit. It's the elections at the local level, the city council, the county commission, who your mayor is.
Yeah.
Those are the people that control the purse. Those are the people who decide, for example, Broward County does have some very wealthy pockets. It also has some very dangerous poor pockets. And part of that is because of how the county commission, at the behest of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, conducts business. So you could be in West Broward, where the JCC is located, and be in very safe quarters. And then you could go about 5 miles, not even to the east, and be in piss poor, crime-ridden, doesn't have any resources parts of the county. And there's a reason it stays that way, because they control the government. They control local politics. I mean, they control most of politics, but do not underestimate the power of local political control, which in the case of Wasserman Schultz has been for almost 35 years. It's a lifetime.
So this is together with community leaders and local law enforcement agencies. The conversation centered on addressing concerns, strengthening partnerships, and continuing to identify proactive ways to keep our neighborhoods safe. At the Broward Sheriff's Office, collaboration and open dialogue remain key to building trust and ensuring we continue delivering the highest level of public safety to the communities we serve. And that would mean something if it weren't at that location. Okay, this isn't serving anybody but Debbie Wasserman Schultz photo opportunity. That's what this was. This was a photo op for her.
Not only that, guys, but in the western part of Broward County, which is where most of the people vote, what's one of the biggest problems that we faced over the 2 congressional runs? It's not over yet. Pull it back up.
Okay. I thought we were done.
So most of these communities are gated. It's not enough that these people have to feel safe by blocking out everybody else. That's not enough. It's not enough to live behind gates. We have to be more safe than that. That's the level of psychosis that these people are living under. And when they no longer have that safety net, I will have no sympathy. And in conjunction with this event, who are they working with? The Jewish Federation of Broward County.
Well, Federation is on the, okay, but here's the thing. So Jewish Federation shares a campus with Posnack JCC. So
Okay.
they share a physical campus. But yeah, I mean, I think that people like Debbie, they thrive off of fear mongering. Because in order for her to actually look like she accomplishes anything, she has to create a lot of fear and then present something she's doing to help the situation. But without that, she'd have to present what she's doing to help this situation, which is the real situation. And she's not doing anything to help working people or fight for First Amendment rights or anything like that. So she's a total fearmongerer. That's what she does. She fearmongers.
I agree. Yes, but no. I understand that Michael Carbonaro is running, but check out his opinion when it comes to Israel, and then you'll understand why you're screwed either way. Now, I want Debbie out, and I think she's going to be taken out either way because of redistricting.
Wait, did he win the Republican primary?
It's not till August.
Oh, that's right. So what am I thinking? Because isn't Claudia that woman in that? She's in that.
I think so. Colin, scroll down, please. The idea,
oh, God.
and it's, she always has like this, I can't even describe like what type of a look I would explain it to be, but she's just such a repulsive individual that there is nothing, as I've often said, there's nothing endearing about her whatsoever. And she is a very tiny lady. And to not really harp on her physical appearance, but she has, it's not even resting bitch face. I can't even call it that.
She's evil. She's evil.
She is evil.
Agreeable, he's being sarcastic. Noah Linden's being sarcastic by saying she looks like she's Middle Eastern. That's sarcastic. Okay.
Yeah.
She is not.
Scroll the pictures. Yeah, she's such a concerned person. Very, very concerned. Very concerned about.
Notice the two yarmulke hats behind her.
Well, the guy on the left, with the Santa Claus beard, he probably has one on too, and you just can't see.
He very well might. Yeah.
But here's the thing: why do you need a press conference? Why?
Because everything for her. The only reason this is even happening is for this photo op. This is completely unnecessary, waste of time, waste of effort, waste of everything. And she could actually be doing things to help the people in the community that are the most vulnerable, that need the most help. And instead, she's having a look at me photo op press conference at the Jewish Community Center in Davie about safety and keeping the neighborhood safe. This is the kind of crap she always does. She does completely unnecessary photo op bullshit, gravy things, and doesn't ever get to what's really going wrong because she doesn't care.
No, so if there's one thing we know for absolute certainty, she does not care. And when she's eventually gone, which hopefully will be in November, or if not, then next election cycle, it will have been, kind of like it's like with Satanyahu, excuse me, Milikowski, assuming that he's dead and she will be out of politics. It'll be worth celebrating for a minute, but it doesn't actually solve the problem. It just reinforces the fact that they are one cog in a rather effed up equation that we are trying to do everything in our capacity to try to do away with. That's our responsibility. That's what we have to do.
Yes, but no. You wonder if Debbie's doing photo ops because she's scared she might lose in August. She's not scared she's going to lose. But yes, she always does photo ops when there's a campaign. That's when she'll come out of her little hovel and make very limited, controlled public appearances with certain people and she has to do those things to get as much press as possible, because otherwise she'd have to actually mingle with regular people to be seen. And she won't mingle with regular people.
No.
So that's the only way she could be seen by regular people, is by photo ops.
She is never questioned. She has not done a town hall. She has not done a town hall in the congressional district in at least a decade. In fact, I think the last time she had to do one was back in 2016, when Tim Canova ran. He had a substantial amount of money. They had to do a TV.
How much money did he have, Peter? How much money did Tim blow through? That's right. $4 million. He blew through $4 million on a congressional race in 2016.
Let me tell you something. If he had just $2 million and he spent it strictly on a ground game and nothing else, he would have won. Just as Jen would have won if we had $1 million and basically had another $500,000 to spend on the ground game, because that's where it's won. And
it is. I can't help but thinking, like, if we ever had $4 million in either race, then I would be the congressperson in that district right now.
Well,
so he had so much money.
But here's the thing that you have to remember about Canova that I think is something we can't ignore, especially now, because of one of the main reasons that you never, especially that first run when you were part of brand new Congress, and obviously a lot changed after October 7th, and we all know how things went this last go around. The point is, you were never given proper financial backing, because I do believe that while Canova had an advantage of kind of being the new kid on the block, Wasserman Schultz is public enemy number one, there was also something to be said about the fact that Canova was actually very pro-Israel.
Yeah.
And when you're very pro-Israel, of course, again,
David, why are you still watching him? This is what I don't understand. Do you hate watch Kyle? Because I stopped watching him years ago and you're left of me. So I don't understand why you watch him.
I think a lot of times people have a hard time accepting the fact that for many people, this is a career. This is why they do what they do. They're not just going to let it go. And it is what it is. But I want people to understand something about the Democratic Party and why it isn't just Wasserman Schultz, as I said, and it isn't just about Israel. There is a systemic problem within the Team Blue part of politics. And we saw this on Tuesday. Again, you know, we don't generally talk about elections, but we're going to talk about this particular election with Kat Abagazala.
Well, we had spoken about her. Well, did you covered that alone? Because I know I really have no interest in covering this girl. And now that she lost, she's irrelevant anyway. This is one of those where I say, don't name the food. It's like, it's not worthy for me to remember how to pronounce her name because I'll never have to say it likely, you know, not because I'm being disrespectful, but I likely won't have to say it. So it's just, don't name the food.
When somebody says what they say regarding Ukraine and China, this is not oh, that was a gaffe. Oh, she shouldn't have said that. No. Do you know that this girl, Kat Abracadabra, exactly.
It's awesome. That's what I'll say.
Do you know that this girl who was running for a congressional seat, supposedly as a populist progressive, hired a foreign policy expert for her campaign? What was that for? Why would you?
I would think that she's clearly trying to benefit the WCCC. I'm thinking that clearly somebody's trying to just profit off of her campaign.
If your answers are that bad when it comes to foreign policy, you do not get the benefit of the doubt. And then when I see everybody out there giving shit to Bushra because she wouldn't drop out of the race, what is the point of dropping out if the person you're going to get is just going to be a wolf in sheep's clothing that is going to do exactly what the corporate establishment wants? One congressional representative is not going to make the difference in whether or not you do anything about Israel. But here's what I will tell you. If you think it's just AIPAC, it's not.
No.
This is Daniel Biss after his win.
Her grandparents and their 2-year-old daughter, my mother, in 1948. And at the same time, that the oppression of the Palestinian people is an unacceptable stain on the world and on the Jewish people as well, and has to be ended. There was a lot of pressure in the campaign to move away from one or the other of those perspectives, and I was not willing to do it because that's not who I am, and that's not what this district is. This district understands nuance and wants someone who accepts the reality of competing, even contradictory sounding priorities and values and realities. Now, that point of view is not the point of view of AIPAC. AIPAC that spent an unbelievable amount of money, over $7 million, to try to buy this seat, to support the idea that we can't accept nuance, that we can't accept the reality of competing narratives, that we can't fight for justice for all, that we can't accept the very Jewish value that there is equal sacred dignity in every single life, and that every person has equal rights to self-determination and to justice. My friends, I'm going to go to Congress and fight for that very basic principle of self-determination and justice.
This is so boring.
Talk about milquetoast.
I've already forgotten this guy. So this is who beat Abracadabra?
Yes.
Okay. So goody for him. And what is he going to win that seat, or is it
Yeah, he's got it. Judeo-Christian values, as he pointed out. Can you explain why liberal Zionism is just as bad?
Well, wait a minute. What do you mean? Judeo-Christian values is just typical Zio speak. What do you mean?
That's what I'm saying. That's what he said. I'm saying that he's a liberal Zio. He is.
Yeah, that's an oxymoron. That's an oxymoron. Basically, the concept of a liberal Zionist is that while they do support Palestinian self-determination, they still support the idea of a Jewish ethno-state. They just support, essentially, these are two-state solution people that are living in a la-la land delusional world that can never exist. And quite honestly, even if it could, it's still just wrong, because an ethno-state requires an ethno-cleanse. And we know that. So that's the point of why it's contradictory to be a liberal Zionist. Again, it's like Jews for Jesus.
To me, it's absolute lunacy. It is beyond lunacy that anyone at this point is defending the state of Israel thinking that it has the right to exist. It does not, and it's not going to, and you are just delaying the inevitable. But he's got a little bit more to say.
All right, this is boring. Okay.
Listen carefully.
Every single human being who lives anywhere else on this planet. And so, let me end this simply by saying, AIPAC found out the hard way. The Ninth District is not for sale. So enough about AIPAC. May tonight be the last time I utter their name. This victory belongs to J Street. And thank you, my friends at J Street.
Okay, so for people who didn't hear what he said, what he's basically saying is, we just showed AIPAC and we just beat AIPAC. And then what he does is he credits the victory to the PAC and the organization that supported him, which is J Street. And J Street is a liberal Zionist organization. And at the end of the day, they support the state of Israel. I'm very, very familiar with the J Street people because they interviewed me when I ran the first time. And it was very clear to me that I was never getting an endorsement from them. So I didn't even try, but yeah.
What if anything is the difference between J Street and AIPAC? Because to me, all the pro-Israel lobby groups, they're all the same. There's just different.
Well, J Street isn't just a PAC, though. J Street is sort of like Jewish Voice for Peace in that it's a broad organization of people that they have different parts of it and different things they do. It isn't just a political PAC, but it is also a political PAC. But they support the candidates, but they are not okay technically with things that are oppressive to Palestinians. with the contradiction being the existence of the Jewish state by definition is oppressive to Palestinians. So that's the problem with liberal Zios. They don't understand the contradiction in their own belief.
No, they have completely lost the plot to the extent that they are going to lose it all. That's the point. They're going to lose it all. And they are on the verge of a total collapse, and it's happening in real time.
Yeah.
And one of the main reasons why we know that the total collapse is coming is because of the economic impact that this war is having and is now having on the United States, and it's just getting started.
Oh, it's just getting started.
This isn't a little thing. This is a generational shift type of thing. Like, that's how serious this is. You're predicting gas prices are going over $10.
My prediction is that we are going to be living in a world where gas averages around $12 a gallon. And I believe after today that my prediction, unfortunately, is going to come to light. And I've been saying this for a long time. You can go back and watch every clip I've ever said about fucking with Iran. And I said, they're going to set all of our oil on fire. And guess what happened today? Today, these idiots, these assholes in DC decided that they're going to go after and bomb an Iranian fuel port. And I don't know if it's a refinery, a processing center, or something that's their means of fossil fuel production. And so Iran responded in kind. And I think it's safe to say that places like Qatar and the UAE aren't going to be having liquid natural gas or petroleum for quite some time. And if people don't think that's going to affect us, we are so screwed. We're so screwed.
So it turns out that Trump told Israel, I'm sure he did, not to repeat strikes on Iranian energy as crisis deepens. U.S. allies reluctant to intervene respond to soaring prices. Iran strikes badly damage Qatar gas output. Oil prices jump by about 10% before easing back. Trump says U.S. not told in advance of Israel's gas field strike. Trump says not sending more troops to the region. That's what he says. I don't believe.
Do you know why we may not have been told in advance? Do you know why? Because Iran took out all of our radar systems in all of our Gulf ally states. Gone. So now Israel, and I'm assuming also the other Gulf ally, our little bitches over there in the Gulf, they're not getting any warning now with incoming ballistic missiles. So that might be a problem for them.
U.S. President Donald Trump said on Thursday he had told Israel not to repeat its attacks on Iranian natural gas infrastructure as tit-for-tat strikes on energy plants sent energy prices spiraling, sharply escalating the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran. Trump's comment came as energy prices jumped on Thursday after Iran responded to an Israeli attack on a major gas field by hitting Qatar's Ras Laffan industrial city, which processes around a fifth of the world's liquefied natural gas, causing damage that will take years to repair.
I only smile out of just the lunacy that just a regular person like me knew that this was going to happen, and yet they did this anyway. So and I am a very big believer in karma. I really am. It's one of the key things that I live by. And I am sorry, but we are so deserving of the find out portion of this process.
I don't know about that. I don't know if I don't agree with you, because I think that unfortunately we're just a country that's been asleep at the wheel for far too long.
Well, what do you call that? What do you call that? Complacency?
That's ignorance and arrogance. I agree. But what I am saying is that now that But here's the thing, Jen, and this is where we disagree. The fact that you have a substantial portion of the country that is waking up now, they are waking up and they are not liking it. This isn't a case of, well, I guess we just have to take our medicine and accept the fact that we are conscripted to every whim of Israel. No, the reaction is, I want out from under this shit. I don't want to deal with them anymore. People
No,
don't want
I agree with that. But what I'm saying is, in terms of us as a U.S. empire, forget Israel for a second. Okay, Ziohel is a portion of empire. Okay, so empire has been going through the world like a bully on speed, like this little runt kid going after thousands of year old civilizations, like this brat, like petulant child. That's what we are, and banging it and banging it and banging it, and now we're getting what we have coming. And yes, we do have it coming. We have years of imperialist bullshit that the rest of the world has been dealing with. Illegal sanctions, war crimes, broken treaties, broken promises. And so, yes, we collectively have it coming. And anybody who doesn't understand that doesn't understand the concept of collective responsibility. Because no, I didn't do these things personally, but I am collectively responsible for where this shithole is right now. So, and until people claim that, we're going to keep circling a drain.
And so what if you do impeach Trump? What does that do? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm saying, hey, listen, Trump has there's absolute grounds to get him out.
Oh, please, if you impeach him 3 times, he'll get a toaster for it or something. He's not going to get removed from office, especially after these midterms. So he'll get impeached again. Great. He'll be impeached 3 times. Okay.
Not only that, but the Democrats, listen, as stupid as they are, and they are pretty stupid and just completely theatrical. Everything is about, posing for the cameras. They want to run against Trump now. Now you want to run against him because now he's toxic as shit. So to kick him out doesn't make any sense. That's going to garner sympathy for him and for the GOP. So they're going to keep him right where he is, and they're going to use that against them, and as they should. So Saudi Arabia's main port on the Red Sea, where it has been able to divert some exports to avoid Iran's closure of the Gulf's exit point, the Strait of Hormuz, was also attacked. The strikes underscored Iran's continued ability to exact a heavy price for the U.S.-Israeli campaign and the limits of air defenses in protecting the Gulf's most valuable and strategic energy assets. Trump, politically vulnerable to rising fuel prices among his core voters, has lashed out at allies who have responded cautiously to his demands that they help secure the Strait of Hormuz, the conduit for around 1/5 of the world's oil. We are on an island now, and the rest of the world doesn't want to deal with us. And now you're going to see what real isolationism looks like. It's one thing to be isolationist from endless war. It's another thing to be isolationist because the rest of the globe is shutting you down.
Oh, and by the way, as a country that imports 80% of what we need because we don't make anything but weapons, we're screwed when they don't want to deal with us anymore. That's the end of that. So I don't know, they just keep pissing off more and more people. Why in the world would anybody in the EU help this country, this administration? And again, I don't agree with the EU at all about Ukraine. I don't agree with them. I'm not with them on that. But from their perspective, we've left them hanging. We totally left them hanging with very little resources and capability in something that we provoked and started regarding Ukraine. So why would they help us? And again, I don't agree with Ukraine, but I could see why they would not be wanting to help us do this. Also, they might not be as stupid to incur the wrath of Iran. They might not be. I don't know.
But he said he had told Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu not to repeat the attack on energy infrastructure. I told him, don't do that, and he won't do that. Well, how could he? He's not alive anymore. He told reporters in the Oval Office where he met Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takahashi. Did you hear what he said in the Oval Office today about the surprise attack? I don't know if I didn't think to grab the clip, but so the Prime Minister of Japan is sitting next to him, and he's like, Well, you know what what Israel did was a really sneaky move, you know, kind of like Pearl Harbor, you know. I was like, is he out of his fucking mind? I mean, he really just says whatever he's thinking, like he just doesn't care. Like, and then he talked about, then he addressed you know, we totally dropped a couple of nukes on Japan. He's like, he's doing this next to the Prime Minister of Japan. Like, he's just sitting there. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is really tough to watch.
Unfortunately, they're on the payroll. So they're not going to do too much about that.
A U.S. official and 3 other people familiar with the planning told Reuters that Trump was considering sending thousands more U.S. troops to the Middle East. But at his meeting with Takahashi, Trump said he had no plans to deploy ground forces. I'm not putting troops anywhere. I
think maybe Takaishi, because it's AI.
Takahashi. Yeah, no, that's what I said. I corrected myself. Yeah,
I don't know.
Netanyahu, in a press conference later on Thursday, again, I don't believe any of it, said that Israel acted alone in the bombing of Iran's South Pars gas field and confirmed that Trump asked it. Who gives a flying F if he did that on his own or not? I'm sure
that's the problem. It doesn't matter now. Now it doesn't matter. From I'm telling you, as of the past however many decades, it doesn't matter if Ziohel acts alone. Because they're not acting alone, because they wouldn't be able to do anything if we didn't support them financially. So there is no them alone.
Correct.
There is no them alone.
Could you continue, please?
Asked Trump to hold off on such attacks. Iran is being decimated and no longer has the capacity to enrich uranium or make ballistic missiles after 20 days of U.S.-Israeli air attacks. But a revolution in the country would not come from the air and would require a ground component, he said, without elaborating. Yes, it would, and there are not the people to do it. There aren't. And, you know, it's unfortunate for any of the Marines that are going to be the first people to be sent over there, but there's no winning this.
No.
There's not. I honestly, my prediction is not a single one of them will hit land. Not one of them is going to reach the shore. And that is going to be a blow to this country like we have not had or seen since like a Pearl Harbor situation.
Well, the other thing that isn't getting talked about enough is how much structural damage to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem Iran has actually done. Israel, if you think we have propaganda, you think we have propaganda ministry here in the United States, you see what's going on in Israel. It's that much worse. Excuse me.
As the Israeli leader spoke, Iran launched a new wave of missiles toward his country, according to Israel's military and Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said. With no end in sight, almost 3 weeks into war, and the threat of a global oil shock growing by the day, Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands and Japan issued a joint statement expressing our readiness to contribute to appropriate efforts to ensure safe passage through the strait. Now, this is me saying this. I don't know what that means. Okay. I don't know what that means. If they're just saying that to sort of like appease Trump and give him some idea that they'll send some help, but without any sort of definitive plan, I don't know. They also promised other steps, again, very vague, other steps to stabilize energy markets, including working with certain producing nations to increase output. You couldn't be more vague. You couldn't be more vague.
Mm-hmm.
The statement offered no details, and there was little indication of any immediate move, with German Chancellor Merz reiterating that any contribution to securing the strait would come only after hostilities ended. And there it is. So in other words, they're saying, sure, we'll help you secure the strait as soon as it's secure. As soon as you have it secure where there's no hostilities, then we'll come help secure the strait. See, that's sort of not the point, right? So, yeah.
Israel's bombing of Iran's South Pars gas field, which Trump said the U.S. had not known about, suggested gaps in coordination of strategy and war aims between the main protagonists. Adding to the confusion around the attack, 3 Israeli officials said the operation had taken place in consultation with the U.S. Listen, Israel is always lying, but they're probably not lying about this. But was unlikely to be repeated. Earlier, U.S. Defense Secretary Hog's Breath told a briefing the U.S. objectives in the war, which has so far killed more than 2,000 people, mostly in Iran and Lebanon, were unchanged, on target, and on plan. How many Israelis and Americans have been killed? But
we'll never know the answer to that. But I would suggest that the refueling plane that they're saying crashed in Iraq, didn't crash in Iraq. It was shot out of the sky. And I think that the injuries are and the casualties are way higher than we're hearing about.
Well, here comes Neville, the modern day Neville Chamberlain, Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, told the House Intelligence Committee that U.S. and Israeli goals differed. The Israeli government has been focused on disabling the Iranian leadership. The president has stated his objectives are to destroy Iran's ballistic missiles launching capability, their ballistic missile production capability, and their navy. Trump administration is requesting $200 billion with a B of additional funding for the war. 3 weeks in, you need another $200 billion.
Because they're losing bigly. But you know what? This is where it's confusing. So why do you need all that money to destroy ballistic missiles that you already destroyed last year?
Because it's a scam. It's a money laundering scam of global proportions with private equity giants BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard at the forefront. That's what it is. That's what it's always been. That's what it always will be until we dismantle it. The Trump administration, again requesting $200 billion, is a new stage in the war. Iran's military said strikes on Iran's energy infrastructure has led to a new stage, in which it had attacked energy facilities linked to the U.S. If strikes on Iran's energy facilities happen again, further attacks on your energy infrastructure and that of your allies will not stop until it is completely destroyed. Not we're going to send a message. It's we are going to destroy it, period. And Iran has shown so far that they're not messing around. When they say they're going to do something, they do it.
They're not like us that way. See, they actually do what they say they're going to do.
And they're backed up by Russia, China, and North Korea. So yeah, keep doing it. Really smart. Like I said, this could so easily, if it's not already a world war, this is crazy.
No, it is a world war. This is already a world war. It won't necessarily be recorded as that until, in the future. But we're already in it. Because we're not even including what's going on regarding like Pakistan and Afghanistan and India and all this stuff. We're in a world war. Not to mention what we're doing to Cuba, what's going on in Venezuela. Yeah. This is a global situation.
Correct. And to me, we'll finish it out. Qatar Energy CEO told Reuters the Iranian attacks had knocked out a sixth of Qatar's LNG export capacity, worth $20 billion a year, and that repairs would take 3 to 5 years.
LNG, for people listening, liquid natural gas, if people don't necessarily know that abbreviation.
Israeli media reported that an Iranian strike hit oil facilities in Israel's port of Haifa, causing damage but no casualties. Yeah, it's amazing how precise they can be with their targeting when they want to be. Since Wednesday, Iranian attacks have also forced the UAE to shut down its Habshan gas facility and set off fires at 2 Kuwaiti oil refineries. So as you can see, and we'll just come to this, we'll conclude here. You can see.
We're going to conclude. We're concluding.
Price spike is insane, and it's going to get worse. It will get worse. So buckle up. And this is what happens when you live in a country that doesn't put on the yellow vests. Maybe, just maybe, we might start to learn our lesson. That if you really want change, you have to take action. That's it. And the action will come quickly because, as you said, If those gas prices get to $8, $10, $12, we'll see how quickly people stay silent or don't end up marching on Washington, because that's what's coming. So who knows what'll happen by the time we get there in the next, 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Jen, who is joining us this evening?
Okay, so I'm very excited because we are being joined tonight by Craig Mokhiber. For people who don't know who that is, you're going to find out real soon. But it is someone who I have been admiring and watching and reading his stuff for a little while now, but particularly since the, Gaza nightmare has started. But I want to start by reading you guys something before we bring him in here. I want to read, this is an excerpt from an article that it was in Mondoweiss in January called Ushering in the Age of Impunity, Venezuela, Palestine, and the End of International Law. And this to me is really a very good segment. So I just want to read this. The recent sound of explosions over Venezuela, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Somalia, Yemen, and Nigeria, and over the Red Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Caribbean Sea is not merely the sound of a momentary imperial spasm by a declining U.S. empire. It heralds something much more terrifying. A new world is being birthed, or perhaps reborn, a world wholly unconstrained by international law or even by the most basic and universal moral principles. A birth that could have been foretold by anyone paying attention to the machinations of the empire and its allies and vassals in recent decades. From the mass incarceration and police excesses of the war on drugs to the renditions, executions, and torture of the war on terrorism, to the systematic, I'm going to have to learn some new words to talk to Craig, immiseration of the many in order to consolidate the wealth and power of the few. The U.S. empire has been on a decades-long warpath, culminating with the extermination of the Palestinian people and this week's assault on Venezuela. Again, this was from January. These ever-expanding ripples of oppression unchecked threaten us all. Because in a world where even genocide is not a red line, there are no red lines. And I found that really amazing. So Craig Mokhiber is an international human rights lawyer and activist, and former senior United Nations human rights official, where he worked from 92 until his resignation in October of 23. And he had written a very widely read letter criticizing the UN's human rights failures in West Asia and warning of the genocide in Gaza. And so I'm very excited about this. So bring Craig in.
Craig Mokhiber, welcome to Revolutionary Change.
Hi, Peter. Hi, Jen. Good to be with you.
Hi, it's so nice to meet you. I've been a fan for a really long time. I'm having a little fangirl moment. It's very nice to meet you. I appreciate it. And I want to start with what was, obviously the major turning point for you was October 7th regarding resigning from the UN. But for people like us, we know that this started so long before that. So I kind of want to know, what was it like for you working there in that position prior to your resignation, in a sense that we've still been watching this nightmare? So I'm just curious how that unfolded, because obviously you were aware long before October 7th.
Yeah. In general, I was in a relatively comfortable part of the UN. I spent all of those more than 3 decades in the UN Human Rights Program, right? So that's the part of the house that, in fact, has performed pretty well during the genocide and during the recent atrocities that we've been witnessing more broadly, because that's where you find things like the independent human rights rapporteurs like Francesca Albanese, the commissions of inquiry like that, which found genocide in Palestine, the International Court of Justice, the humanitarian actors, and others. That side of the UN has performed as it was intended to perform, and has performed quite well. Not least of all, the hundreds of UNRWA staff who have been murdered by the Israeli regime just in the last couple of years, just for doing their jobs, and yet the survivors of which have continued to serve their neighbors throughout the horrors of the genocide in Gaza. That's a part of the UN in which I was always very comfortable. There's another part of the UN, of course, which is the political side of the house, represented by the Secretary General, by the senior political officials of the organization, by the Security Council. I mean, those in particular, which have failed miserably to meet their obligations under the UN Charter to prevent and to respond to mass atrocities like genocide and crimes like aggression. Some of that by design. The Security Council was designed by the winners of World War II to not be able to act when one of the permanent members, like the United States, doesn't want it to be able to act effectively. And some of it by abdication, like the Secretary General, who simply has not had the courage and principle that is necessary to stand up to powers like the US, like the Israeli regime, like the Germans and others, and do what it is they're expected to do in a moment of crisis like that. The tension between those two very much defined my decades in the United Nations. There was a lot of struggle around those sorts of issues, but over a period, I mean, you wanted to see how things evolved over a period of decades, and you can mark the starting point really with the beginning of the so-called Oslo process.
Okay.
You saw the UN more and more abandon its mandated normative responsibilities, abandon the human rights instruments, abandon international humanitarian law, abandon the UN Charter in large measure, in favor of a notion of political expediency that said you defer to power. If the Americans or the Brits or the Germans push back, or increasingly so in the UN, the Israel lobby, you back off. And that is no way to defend human rights. It's no way to defend peace and security. It's no way to defend the UN Charter. And I found myself in the midst of several storms over the years of that, because, you know, when the Oslo process started, I mean, if you go before that, the UN has plenty of sins in its background, including the original sin of ignoring the wishes of the indigenous people of Palestine when they tried to force partition in 1947 and 1948, of excusing the Nakba, the first genocidal assault on the Palestinian people in 47 and 48, ratifying their ethnic cleansing and so on. But when the UN began to change in the 1960s and 70s, when more and more countries from the global south that were decolonized became member states of the UN, you saw a dramatic change in the political positioning of the organization, such that decolonization, self-determination, the struggle against apartheid, the struggle against colonialism, and the struggle against Israeli political Zionism, you know, reached a peak in which it was, the organization was really being true to its norms and standards. Well, that all turned around with the arrival of the unipolar moment. And, you know, and a couple of years later with the launch of the so-called Oslo process that served as a kind of a diplomatic smokescreen, behind which you saw expedited persecution of the Palestinians, expedited confiscation of their land, expedited settlement activity, an increase in mass incarceration, torture, all of the horrors with which we are now very familiar, and moves within the organization to say, don't push on these human rights issues. You can't do anything to upset the peace process that never was. It was never a peace process. It was always a diplomatic smokescreen. It has been absolutely catastrophic, not just for the Palestinian people, but more broadly for the UN and the quest for human rights and peace in the world. And if you were on the side of that was pushing the normative agenda of the UN, you caught a lot of flack within the UN. For me, that peaked with the expediting of the genocide in October of 2023, where the hammer came down on me quite forcefully and ultimately led to my decision to write that letter that you mentioned, Jen, and to do the kind of work that I'm doing now and trying to shine a light on what's going wrong there.
I mean, you've been doing this for a really long time now, like this kind of work. And I was also curious what it was like for you. I mean, you lived in Gaza at one point, I believe back in the 90s. Is that right? Was that when you were back there? Okay. So in what capacity were you there? Like, what was that like for you? And what was your experience there? I mean, I'm sure it had to be very profound in many ways.
Yeah. Well, I've been in the international human rights movement for about 45 years now. And so even before I joined the UN, I had done a human rights mission during the first Intifada in the 1980s to Palestine, where I spent, a period of time directly witnessing the kinds of systematic human rights abuses that are just a part of Palestinian life under occupation. And so I knew the place quite well. It's a paradoxical. I've told the story before that of all of the posts that I've put up on X or on social media generally, the one that got the most vociferous, angry, and hateful reactions was the one where I described the beauty of society in Gaza, because it was so contrary to the narrative of trying to paint an entire people as being some sort of barbarians who deserve genocide, that when I spoke about the warmth and the sophistication and the humor and the education and the beauty and depth of the culture there, that really ticked off those who were in the sort of pro genocide camp. But that was my experience, despite all of the horrors that Palestinians have been subjected to for 80 years, just by virtue of being born Palestinian in Palestine. That society is a rich, rooted, and beautiful society. And we see even throughout this genocide now, we see manifestations of that all the time. But when I returned after that mission, a couple of years later, I joined the United Nations, and then I was tapped to be the senior human rights advisor in Palestine in the mid-1990s, in the beginning of the Oslo process itself. So early, in the Oslo process. And there, we saw the same sorts of realities, the same domination, the same subordination, the same persecution, but with this kind of added layer, what I called already a smokescreen, but this kind of added layer, this curtain that told us that you cannot now, poke at the foundations of this unjust reality there. And so, on the one hand, a wonderful experience. On the other hand, a horrifying experience to see the brutality, to hear the laughter of soldiers from Brooklyn as they beat up on elderly persons in the West Bank, because the dehumanization of the indigenous people, of the Palestinians, has been so complete and so systematic over so many decades that that's the kind of cruelty that you see. And I've always said that this kind of genocide that is ongoing now as we speak, which has not stopped during the so-called ceasefire, during which hundreds of Palestinians were murdered, during which food and medicine continued to be blocked, during which more Palestinian continued to be seized, during which mass incarceration and torture and sexual abuse has continued. So there has been no break in the genocide, no real ceasefire as well. But that this kind of genocide was always inevitable. Mm-hmm. This is an Israeli project that was born in genocide, and it is an Israeli project that is by definition genocidal, unless the plan is to colonize the moon. Colonization of this form, settler colonialism that requires the eviction, replacement, and erasure of the indigenous people, is by definition a genocidal enterprise. That's exactly what we've been witnessing. And what should the UN have been doing in this case? They should have been pulling out all the stops, mobilizing every mechanism, any power that it has, diplomatic, political, even military, through some mechanisms that would have allowed the deployment of a protection force. And instead, what they have done is, in some cases, been sitting on their hands, in other cases, tapped up against the wall of complicity. And again, let me say, with the exception of courageous people like I mentioned, Francesca Albanese, the special rapporteur, who is officially sanctioned by the United States government simply for speaking the truth about Israeli atrocities. The same thing with the ICC judges and prosecutors, a number of human rights NGOs that are subjected to the same kinds of sanctions. But that part of the UN has been great, but the political side of the House, shameless and shameful.
Yeah.
Craig, we've covered Francesca multiple times, and obviously your story, goes without saying, is pretty significant. But the thing that we've noticed, which is probably the most disturbing, as I'm sure you've observed, is that there are far too many pacifists in these moments. I don't want to say they're all Neville Chamberlains, but it seems that for too many circumstances, especially when Francesca is basically being held out to dry, which so many people have just readily been willing to go along with, I find that to be deeply disturbing, and it takes away the full credibility of the UN in so many respects. Like, at some point, you have to make a stand. You have to realize what's happening. And now that we're basically in the midst of a world war, you really have to wonder that if something was done a little bit more drastic on the UN's part a year ago, let's say, that the landscape would look a lot different right now. What do you think about that?
I mean, that's absolutely right. And it's not just the UN, the whole world has decided in favor of appeasement of a historically unprecedented in the post-war years, aggressive entity in the Israeli regime. This is a country that has carried out serial aggression on virtually all of its neighbors, has attacked 7 countries in the last 2 years, is carrying out a genocide, is on trial for genocide in the International Court of Justice. Its leaders are indicted for crimes against humanity by the International Criminal Court. It carried out a transnational terror attack with booby trap pagers in Lebanon. It occupies the territory of 3 nations, the Palestinians, the Lebanese, and the Syrians. It has carried out assassinations all across the region, has attacked humanitarian ships in the Mediterranean. And that's for the rest of the world, which has continued either to, with appeasement or direct complicity in the case, especially of the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, and a few other states. That's, with regard to the broader world. With regard to the UN, again, unprecedented. There has never been a country in the history of the UN that has perpetrated the kinds of acts against the UN that the Israeli regime has done. It violated more UN resolutions than any country in history by a wide margin. It has attacked UN warehouses and food stores and installations and offices and convoys, physically attacked them. It has arrested countless, over the years, thousands of UN staff. It has incarcerated and tortured UN staff. It has murdered 370 UN staff in just the last 2 years. It has declared that the Secretary General is persona non grata in Israel and even in the occupied territories over which they have no authority whatsoever. It has slandered UN agencies. It has waged campaigns that have resulted in the hobbling of UN agencies. And its ambassador stood up in front of the General Assembly with a mini shredder and literally shredded the UN Charter, as they have been doing figuratively year after year after year. And yet, the Israeli regime still has UN credentials. It walks freely in the hallways, bumping into the colleagues, the families and colleagues of which they have murdered, and interfering with UN operations everywhere that it is present. And what has the UN done? It has tried to be diplomatic, tried to be non-confrontational. The Secretary General has tried to both sides genocide. Can you imagine, right? To both sides aggression. The entire international legal order, built up brick by brick, nascent, incomplete, sometimes very ineffective, but built up brick by brick since the Second World War, is being dismantled in the name of a single oppressive regime, the Israeli regime. And in that international legal order, the 2 highest rules, the 2 preeminent rules of international law are: there shall not be genocide, and there shall not be aggression. And now you've got a country which is openly perpetrating what has always been called the first live stream genocide, cliche but true, and serial aggression all around the region. And yet it's still a full member state of the UN with full privileges, even as it works to dismantle and destroy it, by the way, together, hand in glove with the United States government.
I mean, this is the next part I want to get into, is about where we are with lack thereof international law, because, we're of course told that Iran is the largest state sponsor of terror in the entire world, and they're just going around, causing all the problems. And yet I look at this empire, this regime, we say the Israeli regime, but to me, at the end of the day, it's US empire. Because Israel couldn't be a regime without US empire. So that means that really the buck stops here to some extent, right? Like literally the buck stops here. And this country has been a rogue nation for years. So even like we could go long before October 7th. I can't recall a time in my life where this country was abiding by international law, by treaties, by any sort of pacts it makes with anybody, ever. So as a rogue empire that has never followed international law, I'm like, it's hard to be remotely surprised by any of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think, there's always this commentary by U.S. politicians that, the United States and Israel have shared values. And I think that's true, not in the way that they mean it. I mean, this is a country that, like Israel, was founded in the genocide of the indigenous people. This is a country that was built with the enslavement of African people. This is a country that had apartheid that we call Jim Crow, decades and decades and decades long in this country. This is a country that has never been able to purge itself of white supremacy and other supremacist sorts of ideologies. And all of that has very much come to the surface again under the Trump administration, but not for the first time. This is a country that has been guilty of serial aggression all around the world and of colonialism, from, the Philippines to Puerto Rico to, all of Latin America and beyond. And so those are very much shared values. Now, there is this long-standing argument: is the tail wagging the dog, or is the dog wagging the tail with the relationship between the U.S. and Israel? And what I always say is, it's all the same dog, right? You're not going to learn a lot by that sort of a debate because, the United States is not a democracy. For anyone who is holding out that illusion, policy in the U.S. is not determined based upon the will of the people. And certainly, foreign policy in the U.S. has no relationship to the will of the people at all. Those policies are determined by a kind of oligarchic collection of wealthy and powerful forces and entities. And that's even more true, as I say, in foreign policy than it is in domestic policy, although the two overlap in ways that we should talk about. And so that means that, yes, the Israeli regime has an unprecedented level of political capture over U.S. institutions and politics. There's nothing that has ever come close. No country has ever come close to that kind of control. A lot of it, which, by the way, is based upon the dollar, is based upon the fact that in the U.S., we have legalized corruption in politics, right? We have the Citizens United form of governance that says that the highest bidder gets to determine policy. And that's why you get Donald Trump standing up in front of a bunch of supporters of Israel, standing next to Miriam Edelson and saying, she gave me this $100 million and she got everything she wanted and more out of it. So just openly saying those sorts of things. So that capture is real. The tail of the dog is a real factor. But in the other direction, the U.S. has always been an imperial force. It's long been said that Israel is America's aircraft carrier in the Middle East. It has absolutely been hand in glove with Israel in the domination and subjugation of every single country in the Middle East. Because if you look at what's happened over the period of the last several decades, literally now every country in the Middle East, with the exception of one country and two half countries, and I'll talk about that, have either been corrupted and controlled and captured by the United States government and the Israelis, take Jordan and Egypt, for example, or have been crushed into the dust for not going along. And there you can look at Libya and Syria, and now that effort is trying to be applied to Iran. Iran is the only internationally recognized government that has stood up against the hegemonic terror of the United States and Israel in the Middle East. And then the two halves I was talking about were the Ansar Allah part of Yemen that has resisted this very much, and the Hezbollah side of Lebanon that has resisted this very much. But the rest of the region of all of Western Asia has been subjugated by the empire and the Israeli regime acting side by side. If there's a bright light, and I don't want to be all doom and gloom all the time, it's that despite the fact that here in the United States, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the Congress as an institution, the State Department as an institution, the Defense Department as an institution, the intelligence agencies as institutions, and by the way, the major media corporations in the US, all of them are a part of that paradigm of domination of the Middle East on behalf of the US and on behalf of the Israeli regime. And all you have to do is try to follow what's happening in Iran now by watching CNN or Fox or CBS, and you'll see very quickly what it is. Or, by the way, the New York Times or the Washington Post.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's all of them. So tail and dog, it is the same dog. It's often the same people, right? There are people in the U.S. government who are, there are those, of course, who are taking money from AIPAC and other Israel lobby groups. And there are those who are ideologically committed to the project of Zionism, and therefore to whatever it is that the Israeli regime wants to do to consolidate and expand its control in the region up to and including genocide. So I think that debate doesn't help us get anywhere. The two permeate each other in very fundamental ways, and we're up against a singular force in a battle for a more just and human rights-based dispensation in Western Asia.
Where do you, I'm sorry, I was just going to ask one more question. Where do you think this is going to lead in terms of our relationship? When I say this country's relationship with the Gulf Arab monarchies, it seems to me that they're learning that maybe it wasn't such a good idea to cozy up with us. I mean, I could have told them that a long time ago. I would have saved them a lot of problems.
Yeah. Well, they clearly have chosen the wrong horse. There was a period of time beginning with the beginning of the unipolar moment, starting in roughly 1990 or so, in which a lot of people around the world convinced themselves that the U.S. empire was now eternal, that it had been victorious and it was going to impose its will, and the best way to survive was to ingratiate yourself to the empire. And in Western Asia, it was common wisdom that the way you did that was to cozy up to the Israelis. And nobody, was more sort of direct and hungry in trying to do that than the Gulf monarchies, who, after all, owe their very establishment and origin to imperial powers. First the British imperial power, and then the U.S. imperial power when it took the baton after the Second World War from the Brits there as well. And now they're beginning to see, especially with the Israeli bombing of Qatar, that and now with the fact that the U.S. is spending its billions and its military force and everything to defend Israel, but doing virtually nothing on the side of the Gulf monarchies, that they have begun to learn their lesson. And also that there will be nothing coming from Washington, Democrat or Republican, to rein in their violent attack dog, that is Israel, in the region. And so I think that message is starting to finally, belatedly sink in. But it's got a long way to go. I mean, look at the current conflict with Iran. The attack on Iran by Israel and the United States is an act of aggression. It is a violation of one of the highest rules of international law. It was unprovoked entirely, and it was carried out, by the way, in ways that also perpetrated a number of war crimes, not least the massacre at the girls' school in Minab. And so I think that they have begun to understand that this may have not been a good deal, that they have made a deal with the devil, a Faustian bargain, and that the payoff could end up being very, very negative indeed. But that has not shown itself yet. And so you have, for example, Jordan has entered the conflict on the side of the Israelis and the Americans.
Of course they have. Of course they have.
Right. And then tried to claim to be a neutral country while they're actually using their armed forces to defend Israel from a retaliation by the Iranians, who, as I said, were subjected to an act of aggression. And the same can be said for all of the Gulf monarchies that are hosting U.S. military bases. They have tried to play a game where they said, if you're not launching U.S. missiles from one of our military bases, and I think that's been happening as well, but all we're doing is hosting these bases. Well, under international humanitarian law, hosting those bases and allowing intelligence, communications, logistic, troop movements, and other activities to take place there makes you a legitimate target under international humanitarian law when a country is defending itself against aggression. So they've got some choices to make. And by the way, they've got some choices to make vis-a-vis their own people, who are overwhelmingly opposed to the U.S.-Israeli project in the Middle East, and who are cheering as Iranian missiles hit U.S. military sites inside their own countries. So, where is this going to go? The Middle East is never going to be the same. The Americans and the Israelis bet that they could remove the last deterrent force in the Middle East, in Western Asia, which was Iran, that without Iran, there would be nothing to stop them from their, subjugation of the entire region, taking as much of Lebanon as they want to, as much of Syria as they want to, puppeting the other regimes of the Middle East, and realizing their dream for a greater Israel, which is being cheered on by Christian fascist fundamentalist forces in the United States, up to including members of the Trump administration, members of the U.S. Congress, and the U.S. ambassador in Israel, Mike Huckabee.
One of the more disturbing aspects of the genocide, there are obviously several layers to it, not the least of which is the embodiment of it all, which was in Rajab, the murdering of innocent children, of course, bombing of hospitals, hospital workers. But I think perhaps the most unheralded aspect of Israel's genocide that we have aided and abetted for not just the last 2.5 years, but the entire project for the past 75, is we are also faced with the prospect of the disintegration of the First Amendment, not just here at home, but abroad. And the freedom of the press, being that killing journalists has become somewhat of a sport in many respects by Israel. They like to fancy themselves as silencing dissent in the worst possible way. World War II, Vietnam, you name it. Journalists were allowed to cover what was going on. Israel does not believe in you covering what was going on. And I'm sure you're aware of the story that just happened earlier this afternoon. UK journalist Steve Sweeney just missed that bomb, just missed it. Here's what happened in southern Lebanon earlier today.
The rocket attacks were reported against Nahariya and admitted. Fucking hell. Fuck.
Yeah.
Where?
Aftershock.
Yeah. Insane.
Yes, so. Yeah, well, you've probably all seen the footage of the airstrike that took place in Sur district as we were reporting on the destruction of a bridge. We've been treated in hospital for our injuries. I had a shrapnel wound in my arm, deeply embedded in the muscle here. That's been taken out, and here it is in this pot here. But what I do want to say is that this was a deliberate, targeted attack on journalists. There's no mistake about it. This was an Israeli precision strike from a fighter jet. What we were doing was we were reporting on the attacks on bridges, which is effectively severing South Lebanon from the rest of the country. 1 million people now internally displaced. This is the real story. It's not about us coming under attack as journalists. What we're seeing now and what we were reporting on is this plan for Israel to ethnically cleanse the south of Lebanon. This is without doubt an attack. This is on the scale or bigger than the scale of the Nakba. This is the forced displacement of 1 million people, which remains a war crime. And also we have to say that attacking journalists is a war crime. Attacking civilian infrastructure is a war crime. But if they think that they're going to silence us, if they think that we're going to stay out of the field, they're very, very much mistaken.
I have to say, Craig, one of the things, a couple of things stand out to me from this in particular.
I know what stands out to me, but you'll get mad if I put up my graphic, but you know.
Well, what were you going to say?
That's some of this going on here, man. That is kudos to that man. He is a sequoia. Okay. Well, kudos to the sequoia. I'm sorry, but this guy just got, and now he's back. I'm sorry. All right, continue.
I agree, by the way. He puts a lot of his Western journalist colleagues to absolute shame. The number of so-called journalists in the West who decided to strictly be stenographers for power in Washington and Tel Aviv even as their own colleagues have been picked off one by one and now into the hundreds in Lebanon and in Palestine, is absolutely shocking. And here's a guy committing the crime of journalism and almost being killed for it.
Well, you would think that over the past 2.5 years, particularly as many as 200 plus journalists have been killed by Israel, and not killed accidentally, targeted specifically. They have the press jacket on. We want them dead. We don't care if they're Muslim or not. If you've got that press jacket on and you're trying to expose our war crimes, we will kill you. And the U.S. State Department will protect us, so we don't really have any consequences to worry about. Not only was this a very brave act by Steve Sweeney, who said, I'm going to cover what is an attempt to, I guess, blow up a bridge by Israel so that way supplies can no longer be brought into this part of Lebanon. They're attempting to do as they did in Gaza, as they're now doing in the West Bank. What do you expect will happen if you do not attempt to stop this, if you just allow it to continue? And what should probably not come as any surprise, as I'm sure you probably observed as well, is the responses to Steve Sweeney this afternoon, particularly by that of the Hasbara. Well, if we wanted to kill you, we could have killed you.
I love that. That's the best confession ever. They always do that. That's really good. But that's like, that was like Debbie Wasserman Schultz. If we wanted to cheat, we would have. Like, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, I think, very indicative of how there is no morality in these sorts of judgments anymore. That all of the rules have gone out the window, and this is what people who don't care about Palestine and Lebanon and so on. This is a hard lesson they're going to learn, because what is being destroyed in Western Asia is not just Palestinian and Lebanese lives and infrastructure. It is the very notion of international law, of international institutions, of rules, of common decency, of human morality. The gloves are off. The paragraph that you read in the opening, Jen, that's what I was trying to capture there as well, that what's happening here is very dangerous for everyone. And the Palestinians have learned it, where Israel has broken by a wide margin every record for the murder of journalists. And as Peter says, not as collateral damage, but tracked and monitored and assassinated, often along with their families, one after another, and now into the hundreds. The same thing happening in Lebanon. To see a Western journalist with that happening, maybe some folks who don't see journalists from the region as human beings who are in journalists will be shocked enough. I mean, I suspect they're not going to see this reel very often in corporate media, but who knows? By what people in the region could have told you forever. The other great myth that you hear in the U.S. repeated over and over again is that Israel is a democracy, and not just a democracy, but the only democracy in the Middle East. Israel is not now, has never been, and could not be a democracy. You cannot have an ethno-supremacist regime that is exclusionary, that excludes, in fact, numerically more people than it includes, if you count the people who have been forced into exile, the people who are in all of the different parts, 1948 areas, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and so on, that the majority by a margin is excluded from the polity. That's not a democracy, but it's not a democracy in other ways. You cannot have rights if you're not a privileged member of that society. There is no free press. There never has been. One of the first things I learned when I arrived there in the 1980s was that everything goes through a strict regime of military censorship, to which Western media corporations subject themselves without comment or controversy, and report in the U.S. Accordingly. So, when you have a regime that has broken the records for the killing of journalists, broken the records for the killing of humanitarian workers, broken the records for the killing of medical personnel, in targetings, not in collateral damage, that has picked off every hospital and school and clinic and church and mosque one by one. It's not a place where you can talk about these kinds of values in a serious way. And at the center of all of this is that the Israeli project is a project of impunity. Israel has not been and must not be, from their perspective, ever held accountable for any of its actions. And the entire U.S. political system is dedicated to the proposition that Israel will not be held accountable. If you've ever taken the time to listen to the Senate hearings when they are confirming U.S. ambassadors to the UN, you will see that the centerpiece of those inquiries is, will you make sure that Israel is not held accountable for any of its crimes? Will you defend Israel? Not the U.S. Will you defend Israel in the United Nations? And because of that impunity, because Israel has enjoyed absolute impunity for 80 years, including, as I said, with regard to the highest rules of international law, that has emboldened it to do things like hand out golden pagers commemorating a transnational terrorism attack as a kind of boast and a reward to others who have been in one way or another complicit with the regime. That is, empowered it to continue its serial aggression, its assassinations across the region, its meddling in U.S. domestic politics. By the way, giving orders that were quickly followed up on to annul the First Amendment of the Constitution in the U.S. and to persecute students and peace activists and human rights defenders and professors, to go so far as to kick them out of school, to end the tenure of professors, to beat people with police, to arrest them, to have them be fired, to deport them, simply for telling the truth in public about a genocide being perpetrated by the Israeli regime with the backing of the U.S. Of the U.S. government. That's how deeply dedicated to Israeli impunity the United States government and a lot of institutions here, corporations, media, and others, the tech oligarchs in Silicon Valley, all of them absolutely dedicated to that cause. And that's why we have seen that despite the fact that corporate media in the U.S. has been, as I've said, stenographers for Israeli Zionism and U.S. power, because it wasn't absolute enough. You now see things like, pro-Israel billionaires purchasing CBS and Paramount and lining up the bids to buy CNN and taking over TikTok. They forced the sale of TikTok so that it could be controlled by pro-Israel billionaires, so that young people in particular would not hear the truth about the Israeli regime. That's the country we live in right now, thoroughly dedicated not to the cause of international law, decency, or even to the interest of the people of the United States, but to the cause of Israeli impunity that has now led to aggression, genocide, and puts us all at risk even of nuclear war. Remember, Israel is is the one country in the Middle East, in Western Asia, that not only has nuclear weapons, but undeclared, unsupervised nuclear weapons, achieved in large measure through espionage against the United States and France in order to build that program, and in a country where the government is dedicated to an ideological process that is deeply racist, fundamentally violent, necessarily expansionist, and threatens all of us in the end with those kinds of weapons. That's what our government is dedicated to, our corporations, our media.
Yeah. Before we move on, I want to have this question answered for Sunny. Sunny says she heard your conversation with Jonathan Whitall, where you talked about UN Resolution 2803, which is in violation of international law. Can it be revoked? So could you just briefly explain what the resolution is and then tell her whether or not? I think, Sunny's going crazy in the chat with questions.
Go, Sunny. Yeah, it's an extremely important question. I mean, I've written in detail about this on Mondoweiss. Folks can go to Mondoweiss and read that and other pieces that I've written on these subjects. 2803 is a really historic development. It showed you the degree to which the UN Security Council, the most powerful body in the UN, the only body in the UN with enforcement power, has been thoroughly captured by US and Israeli interests, which is something that I never believed I would see in my lifetime with everything that I knew about the United Nations from the inside. Because what 2803 does is it basically endorses Donald Trump's Board of Peace.
Okay, so that's Board of Peace, because I was going to get into asking you about Board of Peace, but I didn't know this. Okay, good. All right, sorry.
And that Board of Peace, if people don't know about, the charter of this Board of Peace, it's not an international body. It's not a UN body. It is a body in which all powers are in the hands of a single person, Donald Trump, not even as president of the US, but as an individual in perpetuity, giving him full colonial authority over everything that happens in Gaza and over all the billions of dollars that they plan to raise for that to go into the hands of Donald Trump and Jared Kushner, who also has a role here, and Tony Blair, infamous war criminal that he is. And it is just on its face, it's outrageous. It wasn't even written in the kind of language that would make sense in terms of international law or international diplomacy. It was one of these bizarre rants that was created by Donald Trump and his little.
Excuse me. It is the smartest, most articulate, important piece of information you've ever seen. I know what I'm talking about because we are making America great again.
Again.
Worse than that. Brilliant job of Donald Trumping. I feel sick. I mean,
that's how you know it's a good impression, because I actually can channel him. Like, I know how to, the mannerisms, the thought process. No, it's the greatest speech you've ever heard. That's because I'm the one in charge.
So can it be repealed? Like, what is the I mean, because is this Board of Peace? This can't be real, right? It's a private club. The money goes to him. Like, how is this real?
I mean, it cannot be real. So, I mean, a couple of things to say about that. I mean, that's what's so scary about it. They got, what should have happened is that the UN Security Council should have said, "Thank you, Mr. President, but it's not the way things work." But what they did instead, 15 members of the Security Council. I mean, Russia and China abstained, but they could have and should have vetoed it. And they chose not to because they were under pressure from the Arab governments in the region, including the Palestinian Authority under Mahmoud Abbas, to support this resolution. And I can talk to you about what all of the motivations were and so on, but it's outrageous. And what I have written about this is that resolution adopted by the Security Council, without sounding too legalistic, is ultra vires and unlawful.
Yeah.
Because the Security Council does not have any authority that don't come to it from the UN Charter. The UN Charter is a treaty under international law. It is a part of international law. It is not above international law. And the Security Council has no authority to take any action or adopt any resolutions that are inconsistent with international law, the other terms of the Charter, and in particular, is going to sound legalistic, in particular, rules of international law that are jus cogens and erga omnes, basically the highest rules of international law that impose obligations on all countries and international institutions. And the Security Council doesn't have a right to overcome that. And what you need to see is that in 2024, the International Court of Justice adopted a landmark decision in an advisory opinion in which it determined that the occupation of Palestine is entirely unlawful, must end quickly and entirely, that the Palestinians must be compensated, granted a right to return, that Israel was operating segregation and apartheid, racial segregation and apartheid, that all states had a duty not to in any way participate in, support, or cooperate with the occupation or the other crimes being perpetrated by the Israeli regime. And that threw a kind of a fear into Israel's allies in Washington and London and Berlin. And they quickly mobilized to try first to put through another resolution that was almost as bad as the Board of Peace, and then ultimately the Board of Peace, even though it is unlawful. Can it be repealed? It could be repealed, but it would have to be repealed in the Security Council, and the US will veto its repeal, right? Because it has a veto power. So what can happen? And I've written about this as well. There is a mechanism in the UN General Assembly, which has been used historically to get around Security Council shenanigans, where it doesn't act in the ways it's supposed to act when it is required to act, and have 2/3 of the member states of the UN with no veto in the General Assembly acting under what's called Uniting for Peace mechanism, where they could adopt a resolution that could for example, ask for the International Court of Justice to rule in an advisory opinion on the portions of 2803 that are not lawful and what member states should do about those things that are not lawful. They could call for sanctions and a military embargo against the Israeli regime. They could mandate a protection force. In 1956, at the height of the Suez Crisis, This is how the UN got around the Security Council to mandate the UN emergency force that deployed to the Sinai at the height of the Suez crisis against the wishes of the Israelis and the Americans. So, a lot of these things could happen. The International Court of Justice could play a role in this. The General Assembly with a 2/3 majority could play a role in this in overcoming that. Individual states and groups of states could come together and issue a declaration saying they will in no way collaborate with this exercise and state their very clear position that they oppose it. And then by whittling away at both the legal and political authority of that resolution, we could begin to dismantle it. Now, one thing I'll say, Jen, the Board of Peace will dismantle itself. The way that it's put together.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's full of landmines. And even now you see they can't mobilize anyone to actually send troops to be in their occupation, their extension occupation force that they're calling a stabilization force. Nobody wants to give $1 billion to Donald Trump and Jared Kushner to put into their own pockets, right? So it's beginning already to come apart. And now the aggression of the U.S. and Israel against Iran, I think, is going to expedite the crumbling of the so-called Board of Peace. But it can do a lot of damage in the meantime if the world doesn't stand up to oppose it. This is King Leopold, who personally owned the Congo and all of the people who lived there. This isn't even 19th century colonialism. This is Belgian King Leopold owning of the people and country of another place. And it is offensive to everything the UN pretends to be about. And so this is what we need. But because so many countries are on their knees before the US empire at this moment in absolute terror, we haven't seen that kind of action. And if it's going to happen, it's going to come from pressure from people, from social movements and unions and activists and media personalities and others to demand of their countries that they shut this thing down before it can do any real damage.
Yeah, I think it's just silly in terms of the theory of it, and that anybody would actually believe that there was any there other than it's him collecting money for private club membership like you would do in elementary school. And I think that its chance of success is about up there with their whole Gaza Riviera of that ever happening, because
it's a part of the same whole.
Right. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. And I'm not exactly sure what will happen, but that's not going to happen.
Well, I mean, in the meantime, we see what will happen because all of this is connected, right? To Donald Trump and Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, Gaza is a piece of real estate, just as Iran is a piece of real estate. Southern Lebanon is a piece of real estate. And they and the Israelis are joined in their vision of the total ethnic cleansing of Gaza. They may be sometimes more diplomatic about it, but the idea is to, look at the systematic nature of the Israeli genocide in Gaza, the way it moved from north to south, and not only chased people away and murdered them, but destroyed everything in its wake, 95% of Gaza, and sometimes having destroyed it, bulldozing it flat, so that if people wanted to come back, they couldn't find even where their house used to be, or the shards of bone of their loved ones who were killed on that spot. This is an effort to completely erase that, stage number one. Stage two is to take over that territory through the Board of Peace so that Israel gets ultimate control, but Trump and Kushner and Tony Blair and others make a profit, a monetary profit from the genocide in the process. So, I think you're right, that bizarre AI image of shining towers that Jared Kushner, without blushing, projected to the so-called Board of Peace.
Well, he is an android, to be fair. He doesn't have human emotion in his body.
Yeah.
So
no, it's what he has. It's what he has. Yeah, he is. He's an android. He is soulless. But what he has in common with the rest of his comrades in arms there is that they have no sort of moral parameters whatsoever. There's no notion of right and wrong, of as I said, international law, international institutions, international diplomacy. In fact, a big part of the push on behalf of the Israeli regime of the Trump administration has been not only to bulldoze over UN institutions and international law, but to dismantle them. That's why the sanctions on Francesca, the sanctions on the ICC, the withdrawal of the U.S. contributions to the budgets of a dozen UN agencies, its decision not to pay the dues that it owns in the billions of dollars to the United Nations, its active slandering of the UN, its efforts to shut down UNRWA with lies and smears. It's not just the Palestinian and Lebanese people or progressive voices in the US that are in the gun sites. International law, international institutions are in the gun sites because they're annoying for the expansionist imperial projects of these monsters of the 21st century.
I
just want to ask you before I forget, Sonny wants to know if you would she works with Doctors Against Genocide. I don't know if you're familiar with that organization, but if you would maybe consider doing a Sunday webinar for them about that resolution, and if I could maybe connect you. Is that okay?
Yeah, with pleasure. Be happy to do something. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay.
There are many theories as to how the empire will collapse. I believe we're in the process of it happening right now. I also believe that so much of all of what we have seen, particularly the Zionist movement, is a class-based movement. There really is something to be said for the rich and powerful being just a little too brazen in their godlike complexes that they have found themselves in the age of advanced technology. I believe it will ultimately be their downfall. I believe that, like pretty much any empire throughout history, the devaluation of the global currency is inevitably happening. I don't know what your thoughts are on BRICS and BRICS attempts at a currency backed by gold, but as far as I can tell, if that does come to fruition, which it looks like it is, the US dollar is already in free fall. The idea of having a $1.5 trillion military budget only accelerates it that much further. I do believe that, like the British Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Roman Empire, we've seen it throughout history, Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, we could go on and on. But it's all relatively similar in terms of overexpansion, in terms of devaluing the currency, the loss of faith by the populace. So much of this has just repeated itself over and over again. And as we look for solutions and conclusion to, I mean, obviously Israel is going to collapse a lot faster than we will, but you have to think about what the future looks like here in terms of what is going to happen regarding the UN once the US is no longer the world's hegemon and is not able to dictate terms universally. How do you see things unfolding, not just in lieu of the war that we're in right now, but how ultimately, if the empire, assuming you would agree, that the empire is going to collapse and what that's going to look like as we wind down the conversation?
Well, I definitely agree that the U.S. empire is coming unraveled, and that one of the major factors in that unraveling has been imperial hubris by the U.S. empire, the arrogance of its actions all around the globe, and the fact that sort of Donald Trump has pulled back the mask, right, that allowed him to function with the agreement of liberal institutions and so on, the empire to function. He sort of pulled off the mask, and he just says, the quiet part out loud. I might take Cuba, I might free it, or I might just take it. He said in his interviews.
It's a level of caucasity that has no bounds. Yeah. No bounds. It's the diarrhea that comes out of his mouth. But ironically, it's what they all think. He's just the one saying it. But yeah,
he's taking the mask off. Yeah, he's taking the mask off, but it's the same ugly face. I mean, remember Joe Biden presided over almost 2 years of genocide, enthusiastically participating in that genocide. So it's not like if Donald Trump goes away, either is replaced by one of the monsters in the Republican Party or one of the monsters in the Democratic Party, that suddenly you're going to see a rosier case. But yes.
I do want to interject on one point, though, which I think is very important here, and this is one of the reasons why I actually think that Trump being in power is the silver lining in a positive way compared to somebody like Hillary Clinton, Obama, Biden, Kamala Harris, etc. Neoliberalism is so much more dangerous than neoconservatism, because you can have a diplomatic individual like a Tony Blinken, who really was the president for the past 4 years, being the exact same person that perhaps the most revolting neoconservative of all John Bolton is, and they're basically the same person. They have the same neoliberal / neoconservative foreign policy philosophy of world domination, but Blinken is much more accepted in diplomatic circles, much as Kamala would have just been a figurehead in a way that Trump is simply not capable of being. And when that mask comes off, it awakens a sleeping giant amongst the populace that are already fed up with how they cannot afford to live as it is. But now that you're kind of seeing, that's why I have always admired Bernie Sanders' run for president in 2016, when Bernie was the Bernie Sanders that he always wanted to be. And he started talking about things like the Koch brothers. People didn't really understand what the billionaire Zionist oligarchic class really was. They couldn't put a face to it, but then they started to. And now you can really put a face to all of this, and you can't look away. There is no going back to sleep now. That's over. Like we are entering a new revolutionary change here in this country. How that unfolds, I'm not sure. But if there is a silver lining to Trump, it's the fact that so many people who would have just went back to sleep, they're not going back to sleep ever again.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not just Trump, it's the oligarchs. It is, as you say, the Israel lobby. I mean, the arrogance, the impunity that has led to them having so much confidence that they would carry out in broad daylight the kinds of abuses they have, attacking people in the U.S., not just with smears and slander that is sort of knee-jerk, but, mobilizing the force of law, against people, having them arrested, losing their contracts, and so on. This has sent a message across society in the U.S., left and right, that these people need to be stopped, that this is a very dangerous enterprise. And I think it's all true. And I also think that the empire is coming undone. I think that new modes of international cooperation are threatening the dominance of the dollar, as you say. All of that is true. The rise of China, the role of BRICS, in a more narrow, but I think extremely important sense, the Hague group of countries that have stood up against the Israeli regime and have agreed to use, everything in their power, their ports and law and so on, to oppose the genocide. All of this is an indication of changes that are bubbling up. However, the empire will not go quickly and it will not go quietly, and it's going to bring a lot of us down with it. The bloody rampage that you see now in Venezuela, in Nigeria, in Somalia, all across Western Asia, in the Caribbean Sea, in the Mediterranean, this bloody rampage you see now are the death throes of the empire. Yeah. And it is a very dangerous moment in history, and this moment will last for some years, perhaps decades, as it goes down. And when you look at an entity like Israel, this is why it is so urgent that the opposition be mobilized quickly and effectively. The Israeli regime, as I've said, is driven by a very violent, deeply racist ideology that the military, the political authorities, and the majority of the population are deeply invested in and committed to. It is a regime that is armed with nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons in addition to its advanced conventional forces. And it is committed to ideas like the Samson option, the idea that if their back is against the wall, they will use their nuclear weapons, and World War III could very well come about just because of the Frankenstein monster that the Americans and the Brits and others have created in the Middle East in this heavily armed, fundamentally violent entity that is called Israel. So it is urgent in the way that it was urgent for the South African people, not the same level of global risk, but the anti-apartheid movement, was up against a regime in South Africa that had a nuclear weapons program, that had chemical and biological weapons, a strong conventional force, and the support of the United States and the United Kingdom and countries across Europe. And yet, the world was able to mobilize in solidarity with the South African people through boycott and divestment and sanction and isolation, prosecutions, action in the UN, international joint actions, and so on, trade, et cetera, to first isolate, marginalize, and deprive the regime enough over time to weaken it so that the resistance from inside, the solidarity from outside, ultimately forced, the U.S. and the United States was supporting South African apartheid straight through the 1980s. And it's only when the people in the churches and the synagogues and the mosques and the unions and the movements forced it through boycott, divestment, sanction, and other actions to end its support that the isolation and marginalization of the South African regime was then able to lead to its dismantling. This is a matter of life and death for everyone. This is a nuclear armed monstrosity that threatens all of us. It has to be isolated. It has to be marginalized. It has to be weakened. It has to be defeated. It has to be dismantled. And it has to be replaced with a new dispensation based upon equality, human rights, the rule of law, and equal rights for Christians, Muslims, Jews, and others, and a rejection of aggression and conquest, and an end to all of the smokescreens like Oslo and the Board of Peace and others that are all just designed to preserve a violent ideology that has wreaked havoc on the Middle East and has distorted democratic processes across the West.
Can't thank you enough. This has been a very eye-opening conversation, as they all are. I think that there's really also something to be said for the dumbing down of our society, which has become far too common over the past generation plus. Intellectual stimulation is something I wish everybody understood was imperative, not just for their own self-preservation, but for humanity in general. And hopefully this will be seen by a lot of people and will be another pillar in what shall be several examples that we should be learning from in terms of how we get out of this. Because I think that's the next phase in terms of what we're in here. People want to know, okay, I'm engaged. I want to be involved. What do I do?
Prepare.
Yes, for sure. Self-sustainability is very important. But I also think that understanding your enemy and what they're doing and how you defeat them, there's plenty of examples throughout history we can learn from. And I learned a lot from you this evening, and we certainly hope that we'll have the opportunity to communicate further. We will be in DC in a month, and I don't know if that's where you're based or not, but we're working on this thing with Doctors Against Genocide. And so hopefully there will be opportunities for further collaboration going forward.
Well, I hope so. Can I say, Peter and Jen, thank you very much for what you do as well. I've been saying that, a big challenge of those of us in countries like here in the U.S. is breaking through this curtain of propaganda that has enveloped, our neighbors so absolutely, who continue to be spoon-fed narratives that are ultimately self-destructive for all of us. And the fact that there are alternative sources of information and dialogue, such as this podcast, independent media, social media, that is our biggest hope in getting the word out on what really is happening out there, and hopefully in turning things around. So, people should really be supporting this channel, should be supporting all independent media podcasts that are actually having these kinds of conversations. They should be knowing their own power: boycott, divestment, sanction, prosecutions, education, demonstrations, civil disobedience, direct action. All of that has never been more essential than it is now. And if you think that there's no connection between what's happening in the streets of Gaza and what's happening in the streets of Minneapolis, you haven't been paying attention to the connections. Who is training ICE? Who is training our law enforcement? Who is directing them amongst our politicians and others? It really, truly is all one struggle.
Yes.
The big part of it is getting the message out. So thanks to you guys for what you do.
Well, I appreciate it. It was so nice to finally meet you. I've been a fan for a long time, and we will connect you with Doctors Against Genocide. They're a great organization. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much, Craig.
Thank you both very much. Appreciate it.
Have a great evening, Craig. Well, that was probably even better than I think you were anticipating. Be still your heart.
There's nothing that is more appealing to me than an attractive man that is extremely bright. You know what I mean? Like, it's so appealing to me. It's all in the here. This is it's all good.
The ice, Chico.
I mean, look, the salt and pepper thing doesn't hurt at all, but it's a brain thing. It's a brain thing. I have this very sapio-sexual thing going on for me. So that's why it's important to me that we interview smart people. I can't talk to stupid people like that. I don't want to. And sometimes you want to bring on people that I just, no.
Sorry, that's what my Saturday show is for. Patreon.com.
Fine. You can talk to the less smart people. I like to talk to the very
revolutionary change for as little as $5 a month. You can become a supporter of our small but mighty, despite being suppressed but growing channel. We did pass 115,000 subscribers in the past couple of days, which was great. Pirate Justin with the $2. Jen looks more Middle Eastern than Israelis. I would agree. At least
I appreciate it. I am fairly pasty white myself. But I think it might be because the keffiyeh, I'm blending, and maybe a little bit of time in the sun. But no, I turn red, not brown, unfortunately.
Jim Talib with $5. Always a pleasure to see you, my friend. Nawal Najir, it's been a while. Good to see you, friend. Thank you for the 1999. Big fan of Craig. Thanks, Jen and Peter, for spreading the truth about Israel. The Zion regime must be stopped, and I'm glad Iran is standing firm. Oh, they're standing firm, all right. Actually, they're standing on our necks. That's what's basically happening now. Citizen Bendejo with the 50 pesos. Is Tulsi right, guys? I'll pull a Bondi, pretend Americans can't tell Epstein equals Iran equals Israel. And if Zios know America is fed up, why keep poking the bear? I think Tulsi Gabbard is a coward, and we're going to get into her in a second. It's a damn shame that that is the case. But Tulsi, like so many others, as we have seen, is more concerned with her career than she is with doing the right thing. And you know why I single out Tulsi? Why we single out Tulsi?
Oh, I've got a lot of nits to pick with her.
Tulsi's a smart cookie, and she knows what's going on. She's not a dumbass like Hegseth, who just wants to show off his bravado because he's such a little man in so many respects. She is an intelligent woman who knows exactly what's going on, and her career comes first, like it does for so many others.
Oh, wait, let me just answer. Tony D was asking if he's an author. He is an international human rights attorney, but he writes for a lot of publications, including Mondoweiss, which is one of the regular ones. But his writing is in a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Citizen Pendejo with the 20 pesos. Platforms losing their minds, censoring off the charts. Hey, our channel is being censored heavy tonight. I mean, listen, it is to be expected. This is how they play, and it's not going to change, but we're not going to change either. And Skedward Bobby with the 5 Canadian A, always on point. Now, what is the solutions?
We talk about the solutions. The problem is most people don't really like what they hear when we talk about solutions, because what people want is some sort of fix so that we can continue living how we're living, but just do it in a gentler, kinder way. And that's just not going to happen. So solutions are really things that involve degrowth and less building and more sustainable and regenerative agriculture and community and mutual aid. And the only way to really fight fascism is with community. Community is the only real solution to fascism. That's how you do it. We're not gonna vote our way out of it, especially in a country that isn't even a functioning democracy. So, that's not going to happen.
And of course, when we talk about the dumbing down of society and the ADD crisis, as I've often said, this is our greatest asset, and it's our greatest detriment at the same time. Technology, particularly the only two pieces of technology that I really use, which is my cell phone and my laptop, is primarily for work purposes. And even when I get distracted, I do, glazing, if you will, every once in a while. I get caught up in some of the stuff. But think about the fact that there are people in this country in the millions that are on social media 8 to 10 hours a day. I mean, I can't fathom that.
Okay, we need to talk about tonight's sponsor. Rachel, what was this called? What's our strain of the evening?
Are they really? Well, no. Could
ice cream.
Is this going to be like a reoccurring thing?
It doesn't necessarily. We just really recently came into a couple of new good things. So I was just sharing tonight's strain.
Why are they a sponsor? Are they sponsoring the show, or what is this?
I'm just joking. It's the strain I'm smoking tonight. You're so square.
Speaking of
tonight's strain is ice cream.
Speaking of what would be considered a very important moment, and one that I think when we look back on the dismantlement of the Israel-U.S. alliance, I do think that there is something to be said for what Joe Kent has done, the impact that his decision is having because of the reaction that has been coming left and right from the powers that be, the people that are currently in control of the levers of power, and the reaction that they have brought in regards to how do we deal with somebody who is a Green Beret who served 10 tours and his first wife was murdered by ISIS. Here's what we do. We send out people like Jonathan Greenblatt.
Okay. Who resigned yesterday in a very public letter from his position as the head of the National Center for Counterterrorism. ADL opposed his nomination a year ago because of his white supremacist and extremist ties. He'd engaged.
Oh, this is the pot calling the kettle black.
As if we couldn't see this coming.
White supremacist.
Yeah, because we didn't see this coming. Like this, what other card were they going to play?
Is it me, or does Greenblatt resemble that little mushroom? I feel like his head kind of resembles that little mushroom. Look again, look. I'm thinking. All right.
There's really something to be said about these bald, nebbish Zio Jews. Like, they really all look alike. They just do.
Pathetic and weak and mealy and cowardly. And he exists only because of this position that he's basically put himself in, where he gets to be like the arbiter of what is anti-Semitic. Somehow he is the arbiter of anti-Semitism.
Oh, yeah. Well, Mr. Pink,
a man who's not even a Semite, mind you.
No, he's very Eastern European.
Anti-Semitic rhetoric long before he was nominated. So when this person publishes a letter saying, I'm resigning because Israel pulled us into the war, Iran didn't pose a threat.
And so my question to you is, do you look at that and say that is an anti... This is the question. Is his decision and his letter, in your mind, a protest of the war and what Israel as a country politically is doing?
Yeah.
Or do you look at that and say, he's an anti-Semite and he doesn't like Jews? This is what I think is the fundamental question.
Right. Well, look, let's talk about it. So you can say, I oppose this war on some grounds, but to blame Jews or the Jewish state for the war? He testified in his conference.
Wait, see, but he just did it right there for anybody who's not paying attention. Right there. Every other sentence when they talk about Israel is calling it the Jewish state, the Jewish state, the Jewish state. They keep doing it over and over. He will fit that into every other sentence. And so when you say that somebody's criticizing the Jewish state, it makes it easier to sound like they're criticizing Jews, right? That's why he has to keep doing that, and specifically right here.
And of course, this is, like I said, this has been the universal response from virtually every person, because they all get the talking point. They all get the same talking point. It doesn't matter that he served this country as honorably as anybody would who volunteered for military service. Now, you can have your opinion that it wasn't any just wars. And of course, I agree. But here's the thing about warfare, ladies and gentlemen. And this is why I've always said that my hero is Teddy Roosevelt, because even if you don't agree with somebody about their position on war, if they're willing to die for what they believe in, then they deserve respect. Jonathan Greenblatt wants you to die for his safety. He doesn't give a damn about you, and he sure as shit would never put himself in harm's way to die for what he believes in. He wants you to die for what he believes in. Joe Kent, on the other hand, would die for what he believes in. And now he's trying to save the American people from World War III with Iran and much, much worse. So Greenblatt has to smear him because he is an aider and abettor to the state of Israel, period.
Information hearing a year ago that the Islamic Republic of Iran and their proxies were threatening American service members. Yesterday, he says, there was no threat at all. What's the difference? So we know that the Islamic Republic of Iran has murdered more Americans perhaps than any other sovereign government over the last 40 years. Killed American service members, diplomats, civilians in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Saudi Arabia, all over the Middle East. So to suddenly say, whoa, 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 they didn't pose a threat, they weren't a danger to us, right. It's just the Jews who made us do this. I mean, come on. President Trump, you can like him or dislike him, but he does exactly what he wants to do. And I appreciate that about him, even if I don't agree with everything that he does.
Oh, he agrees with everything he does because you tell him what to do and he listens. In addition, people who denigrate service members, especially ones that didn't serve themselves, you're the biggest fucking cowards alive. Like you
that's a big yeah. I mean, people like him are just so cowardly and mealy and pathetic. And again, I cannot stress this enough. There is a level of compensation, okay, that a lot of these men are dealing with. And it's just that simple. There's a level of compensation that we're dealing with. Not to mention the fact that these are very miserable people. See, these are miserable, unhappy people, and they want everyone else to be miserable and unhappy too.
Here's an interesting turn about fair. I'm not even going to call it about fair play, but Colin, I need the article, please. So it turns out that it's not just enough to go after Joe Kent. They also have to go after his wife, Heather Kaiser, who has wrote for a left-leaning outlet whose editor reportedly received payments from supposedly sanctioned Iranian broadcaster. Who is it that Joe Kent's wife, Heather Kaiser, happens to write for? Max Blumenthal at the Gray Zone. Now that's an interesting layer. Now you have to wonder that because of the fact that the Gray Zone is a true journalist organization that is adamantly anti-war, especially when it comes to anything related to the U.S. and Israel, that perhaps his wife changed his mind about a number of issues? Is that possible?
Well, I think it's a weird I said to you before when you told me this, that I find it to be an interesting conflict position for the wife of the head of counterterrorism to be writing for the Gray Zone. That just seemed to me to be a little bit complex. So
Heather
I'm
Kaiser,
not exactly sure. Yeah.
Heather Kaiser, wife of Joe Kent, has supported her husband following Kent's resignation as director of the U.S. National Counterterrorism Center over his objections to the ongoing Iran war. On social media platform X, Kaiser reposted and pinned Kent's resignation message. This led some social media users to speculate about her influence on Kent's political views. Keep scrolling. Kent announced his resignation in a letter addressed to the Donald, I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war, etc. So she married Kent in 2023, following his unsuccessful campaigns for Congress in 2022. Scroll down. Not up, down. There you go. Kaiser has written for the Gray Zone in 2023, a publication founded in 2015 by Max Blumenthal. The outlet is known for its anti-war stance and has frequently published content critical of Israel and U.S. foreign policy. According to a 2024 report written by Joseph Menn in the Washington Post, the website's managing editor reportedly received payments from Iran's state-run broadcaster Press TV, which was sanctioned by the U.S. back in 2021. Many of its articles strike a leftist tone. Oh, you think so? And its coverage has been positive towards Russia, Syria, and other authoritarian states because, of course, the Washington Post would say such a thing. Beyond her writing, Kaiser is a visual artist with a background in military service who rejects the use of AI in her work. Good for her. Stating that all of my artwork is original. And in her website says that she does not now and never have used AI in any form. She served nearly 11 years in active duty in the U.S. military, including deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan before leaving the service in 2018. Later pursued full-time, working as a photographer assistant, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, listen, that type of stuff I think is very relevant. I do think it's possible that she has had a positive effect on him in the sense that maybe, just maybe, people have an opportunity to evolve on their political positions, including somebody who put their life on the line for many years in combat zones like Joe Kent did. And now he's trying to sound the alarm about how much worse this can get if we don't do something about it now. And we agree. So this is the letter that Joe Kent wrote to the President of the United States, his resignation letter. It's not long, but it pretty much hits on the points that one would expect to hear. Colin, can I have that letter, please?
Before we start, Colin, if you're capable of being visible and you're decent, can you just come on and say hi? People are concerned about your safety and they would like proof of life.
I'll tell them to come out of the dungeon.
No, I feel bad. Like these people think like somehow we're hiding Colin somewhere. Colin.
No.
Okay.
Funnily enough, I need a second to actually turn my camera on. It's a whole thing.
You can hear Colin, everybody. Colin is here. He's all good.
Tied up. He's tied up, but he gets fed 3 meals a day. All right, 2 meals a day. I'm not lying.
Everybody, we're gonna get to see. Everyone's gonna get to. There's Colin.
There we go.
Everybody, say hi to Colin.
Mostly not AI.
No, he's real. I've met Colin in person. If I never met him in person, I wouldn't know, but I have met him in person. So.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, get back in the dungeon where you belong.
All right, go back in your dungeon, Colin. All right, everybody happy now. Colin is free.
From the former director of National Intelligence, National Counterterrorism Center, President Trump, after much reflection, I have decided to resign from my position as director of the National Counterterrorism Center. Effective today, I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. I support the values and the foreign policies that you campaigned on in 2016, 2020, 2024, which you enacted in your first term. Until June of 25, you understood that the wars in the Middle East were a trap that robbed America of the precious lives of our patriots and depleted the wealth and prosperity of our nation. In your first administration, you understood better than any modern president how to decisively apply military power without getting us drawn into never-ending wars. You demonstrated this by killing Qasem Soleimani and by defeating ISIS. Again, licking his nutsack doesn't do you any favors.
Agreed, Andrea. Agreed. I thought the same thing. It's like he had to compliment something that wasn't even complimentable.
Early in the administration, high-ranking Israeli officials and influential members of the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your America First platform and sowed pro-war sentiments to encourage a war with Iran. This echo chamber, and that should you strike now, there was a clear path to a swift victory. This was a lie, and it's the same tactic the Israelis used to draw us into the disastrous Iraq war that cost our nation the lives of thousands of our both men and women. We cannot make this mistake again. As a veteran who deployed to combat 11 times and as a Gold Star husband who lost my beloved wife Shannon in a war manufactured by Israel, I cannot support sending the next generation off to fight and die in a war that serves no benefit to the American people, nor justifies the cost of American lives. I pray that you will reflect upon what we are doing in Iran and who we are doing it for. The time for bold action is now. You can reverse course and chart a new path for our nation, or you can allow us to slip further toward decline and chaos. You hold the cards. It was an honor to serve in your administration, to serve our great nation.
Okay, so thoughts are like what I said at the beginning. It's like, but he still felt the need to like praise him for what this is someone who took a job with an administration that has been under investigation with a president who's been impeached twice. And so now, all of a sudden, is having, some sort of he's having some sort of like break of conscience. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, and also, is it not just that maybe he did that because Tulsi doesn't have the sack to do it? She's a whole other disappointing situation to begin with. So maybe the compromise was, well, I don't know. Because where the hell is Tulsi?
Well, like I said, Tulsi, of course, gave the very milquetoast response that, it's not intelligence job to make decisions. It's the president's. Okay, so
no, it's exactly your job, lady. And here's the thing: any presidential ambitions can be kissed goodbye by her, because she has now sufficiently pissed off all the sides in her complete flaky, flip-floppy, cowardly bullshit way. Yeah, you were all talking a big game back when the days of the DNC. But now that we're dealing with a Holocaust and another war, you are seemingly so quiet.
And,
I don't get it.
And very important, if you think about what would have been the point of rosy language on the part of Joe Kent? There isn't any. No matter how much you kiss his ass, no matter how much you talk about how it was an honor, at the end of the day, if you cross Israel, you are persona non grata. It's over. That's all that matters. That's why every person that is part of the MAGA shill paid coalition of Hasbara is going to say the same thing about you. All of them. I don't have to name names. You guys know who the cast of characters are. They're all going to come out and say the same bullshit. You can't win. What you can do, and even if what Joe did was self-serving, which I'm sure, it probably in the long run, you'll see that it was, he'll, probably be running for office or something, but he still did it. He still was willing to give up that position and say, not only should we not go to war with Iran, but that Israel is the bane of our existence. So credit where credit is due for saying that. But of all
I'm a little confused about something. I'm sorry. So his first wife was killed. Is that what it is? His first wife was, and now he's married to a woman who's been a reporter for the Gray Zone.
Yeah.
That's an interesting switch.
It is. Hey,
that's an interesting evolution.
It is, but that's why we're living through revolutionary change. Now, I'm sure most of you know that he did give an exclusive interview to Tucker Carlson, and there's a lot of things that were discussed. But of all the things that I think were relevant, of all the topics that were relevant to this moment that we're in right now, and why it's imperative we do not take our foot off the gas, it is this.
Knew each other, and the last time I saw Charlie Kirk on this earth was in June in the West Wing in the stairway. And I said hi to him, and he looked me in the eye, and he said very loudly, and it's a small, you've been in the West Wing, it's small, it's a tight space. And he said, Joe, stop us from getting into a war with Iran.
Now, if anybody still wonders whether or not there is a conspiracy surrounding the removal of Charlie Kirk, you have a man who was the director of counterintelligence when Charlie was assassinated. And he is telling you that we were in the West Wing together, and this was the last time I saw Charlie alive. And what did he say? Joe, please save us from war with Iran. These puzzle pieces keep fitting together ever so effortlessly that you can't help but determine that something very unsettling happened with that assassination.
Agreed, Sonny. Agreed.
Yeah. She has an opportunity
to
salvage whatever is left of her career if she walks now.
It's too late. She would have here's the problem is, to me, she had to walk the minute this started based on the fact that she just testified, what was it, a year or so ago, a couple years, when was that? Was a year ago.
Hold on. She was just there in front of the committee the other day.
No, but I mean, when she originally testified like a year or so ago, saying that there's no intelligence to suggest that Iran has, picked up their nuclear weapons program or has advanced their, nuclear program. And then as soon as then Trump was questioned about, well, wait a minute, Tulsi Gabbard had said, and he said, well, I don't care what she said. As soon as he said that, as soon as Trump dismissed her, that's when she needed to resign to retain any amount of credibility and sort of any strength. She has no dignity left. As soon as he completely discredited her to the entire friggin' world, and she sat there and never came out and has basically been in hiding until now her next in command had the balls to resign, she's done. I'm just saying there's nothing she's going to do now.
Yeah, and it's a bad look because she's trying to straddle the fence. She doesn't want to throw Joe under the bus, which she didn't, but she also will not challenge Trump, which makes her look weak, which she is. If she and now listen, one thing I will say in defense of her that you're not gonna give her this much grace. Joe just resigned yesterday. He just stepped away.
Doesn't matter. If she wanted to salvage her reputation and her credibility, she would have resigned a long time ago, and certainly before him. So at this point, anything she does say or do is only in a response or reaction to him, and just as like her running around and doing crisis control. Not because she really gives a shit. If she really gave a shit, the minute Trump dismissed her, she would have left.
Winter Walsh, she is weak because she is power hungry. That's the point. She's not strong. She's not courageous to say, I'm going to step away because it's the right thing to do. And wherever the chips fall, they will fall. Instead, in her mind, it's, well, I really don't want to lose this position because it's a position of power.
But here's the thing, Tulsi, it isn't a position of power. If you had any power, then what you said would have mattered. But it didn't. So what she's interested in isn't power, it's title and prestige. She doesn't have real power. So I don't know what she thinks she's salvaging. As far as I'm concerned, she has completely ruined all credibility with me.
Meanwhile, Joe Kent is sitting down with Tucker Carlson and letting the cat straight out of the bag regarding his position regarding Charlie Kirk's assassination, which is Israel did it, is basically what he's saying.
Very loudly.
He was single-minded.
And he walked off and he went, I believe, into the Oval. So when one of President Trump's closest advisors, who is vocally advocating for us to not go to war with Iran and for us to rethink at least our relationship with the Israelis, and then he's suddenly publicly assassinated and we're not allowed to ask any questions about that, it's a data point. It's a data point that we need to look into.
What do you mean?
And it's interesting to me that somebody who worked for national security wouldn't have any sort of better knowledge or information as to why wasn't that further investigated and why wasn't that prosecuted. I mean, I understand this isn't the Justice Department, but you're talking about something that could have been declared an act of terrorism when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and in many cases would be assigned a label of terrorism, which it probably would have been if they, had a way to pin it on brown people. But somebody like this, I would think, would be all over acts of terrorism like that. So I think this is all very interesting, very suspect.
I agree. And again, he is saying what I think a lot of people would want to say, but can't say. And he's saying it. He's saying that not only was Charlie assassinated and it was a planned assassination, but there was a concerted effort to cover it up. And they did cover it up. But now some of the shield is being pierced. And that's good.
When you say we're not allowed to ask any questions about that?
We've been told that this individual, Robinson, is a lone gunman, and maybe he is. But the investigation of the National Counterterrorism Center was a part of. We were stopped from continuing to investigate. And the FBI will say that they stopped that because they wanted to turn everything over to the Utah state authorities. Everything's going to trial. It's very, very sensitive. But there was still a lot for us to look into that I can't really get into. But there was still linkage for us to investigate that we needed to run down. And I'm not making any conclusions. I'm not saying
No, I don't think you are.
because of this happened. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying there's unanswered questions. We know the pressure because of the text messages that have been made public that Charlie was under a lot of pressure from a lot of pro-Israel donors. And again, we know Charlie was advocating to President Trump against this war with Iran.
Okay, so again, if this was what this guy thought, where has he been since, when was it, September 10th, when Charlie Kirk was killed? Okay, so once he realized that as head of counterterrorism, that you weren't even part of any sort of investigation and there was nothing going on there and we weren't doing, but he's been sitting there just collecting a paycheck since then to now. So he's been fine with it all until now, but Iran is the line for him. Really? He was okay with what's going on in Gaza. He's okay with his, Charlie Kirk getting murdered and knowing how it happened and sort of sitting on the sidelines while that wasn't prosecuted. But now he's got a problem.
Well, this is exactly why I said from the top that it's very likely a self-serving move. But even if it is a self-serving move, it's still a move that is hurting Israel and the U.S. State Department equally in a very negative, profound way. It's the reaction that is making it even more detrimental to their case than if nothing was said.
He's the kind of person that from what I'm getting, okay, this is the kind of person that got permission to resign before resigning. This is somebody where it was a planned thing and he got permission and to do it. This is the kind of person that would get permission to go on strike. He didn't do this out of any sort of real defiance or upset about Iran. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't know what the reasoning is. I don't know, what maybe we'll never know, but no, he has been sitting through an unconscionable administration. And now he's got a country. I don't think so. So I don't know who's paying him or who's supporting him or who's prompting him or what his political aspirations are, but he's full shit.
Well, to be fair, I do think that there is something to be said for his decision to do what he's doing because it finally hit close to home. It hit close to home because of the fact that he has served in combat. And he knows that sending any service members over there, it's basically a death sentence. And now he cares about it.
You're really giving him benefit of the doubt, like that this was.
No, I'm only giving him. No, I'm saying it's self-serving. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt that he cares about the soldiers that are going to get killed. He didn't step down when Israel was committing a genocide against the Palestinian people because they're not as important. That's all I'm saying.
How about his country that he's, again, the head of counterterrorism, unilaterally murdering people in fishing boats in the Caribbean Sea?
What murder?
And he's okay with that. He's okay with that, right? Extrajudicial killings of people not even deemed to be terrorists. He's okay with that. But this was the bridge too far. Bullshit. I call bullshit. Anywho.
There will be a lot more that will come out about this, as I'm sure anyone who's been paying attention is going to. So like I said, it's not really a question of, do you like Joe Kent? That's not really the issue here. The issue is, does this move hurt Israel and the U.S. State Department? And to me, it absolutely does.
Well, I think it adds it's just one more, layer. It's one more piece of straw, right? For sure, that it's one more thing that gets people looking like, well, wow, an official resigned, So yeah, I guess regardless of his reason, it's a bad look. But then I have to wonder the calculation behind this happening and the timing of it, because this isn't he just all of a sudden had a conscience. This was chosen for a reason. Now, is he running for office right now?
I believe he is going to be.
Okay. So it doesn't surprise me that we're finding out that Trump's numbers are shit, They're planning on losing midterm elections. And now you have a guy who can absolutely stand up and say, see, I stood up to Trump. You could still vote for me. And that's a way for them to keep keep one of their own in Congress, as opposed to potentially flipping that seat blue. So I don't know, but this is not what it appears to be. So.
Checkpoint Charlie with the awesome profile pic with the $2. I was done with Tulsi when she endorsed Biden in 2020. That move made absolutely no sense whatsoever. It was so odd. And then I remember when all the Dem sycophants like Neera Tanden came out and lauded after they called her a Russian agent and she's an anti-American and she's a traitor. Oh, we love Tulsi now. She's
I
know. They're squawking seals. That's what they are. All of them. Both sides. Don't matter. They all suck to high heaven and they're all in it for the money. That's it. They're the anti-Americans. But Tulsi, yeah, she's made some pretty shitty moves.
Yeah, Travers, you got to always look at the ulterior motive. If they need to try to get somebody to win a seat somewhere, they need to find someone that can win a seat. And how do you do that? You got to make someone look like a hero, make someone look like they're standing up, and then he can be that kind of Republican. And then you can put him over in a seat somewhere where you don't want to flip a seat. So
see how it works, ladies and gentlemen? It's actually pretty easy. Once you see it, once you understand it, it's not hard to figure out. And finally, agreeable with the one Revolutionary Change membership gift.
Thank you, agreeable.
We hope you enjoyed it. Smash that like button.
Before we go, I gotta promote, guys. We had covered it. Colin, what happened to the thing that was there? Did you have to move it for something else? Yes, I did run for office a couple of years ago. Thank you, Colin. Okay, guys, before we go, sorry. Let's not forget that our friends over at California United for Single Payer are having a healthcare day of action. Will you scroll? Can we scroll and see a little bit? Because I forget all the deets. Okay. So guys, this is tomorrow. It is all day from 10 to 5. Butch Ware, who we love, is going to be there. Dr. Melina Abdullah, Shama Sawant, who we are supporting with our PAC, is going to be there. Tina Fredericks and Melanie Cohen. Is that what it says? So guys, check this out. www.cuspcoalition.org. And they're all meeting at the state capitol in Sacramento. And it's a whole day of events. And they're really trying to get this. This could be a big, big thing for single payer healthcare nationally. If a state like California is able to get this through. We've been saying it for 5 years since we started the show that, yeah. And I know Grumbine is screaming at me right now through if he's watching this, but I truly do believe we need the push, right? We need the push. So, so guys, check it out tomorrow. Go to CUSP coalition.org and check. And especially if you're out in California, show up for this and try to get healthcare.
Yeah. And by the way, if Tom Steyer has half a brain and he's actually thinking about making a move right now with the gubernatorial race in the next 3 months, this is your chance. Because you have the money to back candidates that will absolutely push this to your desk in Sacramento, if you're actually serious. But we'll see. I don't put anything past anybody because we all know that it's all about crumbling empire. So can't really expect much. But with that being said, smash that like button, share, subscribe.
What do you have coming up?
I have no set plan for Saturday, so you'll just have to tune in.
Saturday is supposed to just be a pontification. It was never supposed to be a guest show. That's the thing. That's the truth.
Sometimes a guest is welcomed. That's how.
I don't know. I don't know. I think you do really good when you're solo.
Oh, you for sure. But sometimes someone hop on is not bad either. Depends on the topic. Depends on the importance. But I will be there, so don't be square.
Do we have anything scheduled for Monday? Let's see.
Yes, we have Zach Faust finally coming on. He will
be. Yeah, I had reached out to Zach and he was sick, guys. But one of the things I wanted to talk with him about was he's an economics person. I mean, it's hard for me not to zone out and hear, but it's important stuff that we need to understand.
Thank you. Yes, but no. And the same to all of you guys. We love you all. We appreciate you all. I'll see you Saturday, and free Palestine.
Palestine.
Good night.